Okay. Typically, we would look at issues of homework from week number 5, but your week number 5 assignment was to knock this figure out. And that's in preparation for the assignment that you're going to have this week, because the assignment that's coming up this week, if you take a look at your session number 7, oh, do you need working files?
Oh, no, I've got them.
Okay.
Thank you.
If you take a look at the assignment from week number 7, you will see it is this same file with a set of retouching notes on it that look like this. We'll go over this stuff in just a little bit. But your very first thing to do is to actually knock this thing out. Now, I don't think last week, did we do this knockout via channels in this class last week? I don't think we did. And also, what I want to backstep just a second here to the path thing. I did not tell you guys how to actually move paths from one image from one file to another, did I? No, I did not. So we are going to do that part first. So I need everybody to go find their homework from session number 4. I'm going to just steal somebody's from session number 4, but you need to find. It's the one where the girl is isolated and put onto the metal background. That's what I'm looking for here really quick. So let me find a good copy of that. So you need one that's actually got a path in it. So I know some of you orphaned your path. We talked about that. That's the part that I'm going to show you how to try to fix that. So let me just see really quickly. If you don't have one, let me know, and I will post one so that you have something to work with. But what I'm looking for is, in this case right here, that's the problem. There is no path with this image. So let me keep checking really quick. Yeah, so this one's actually done correctly. So does everybody have a copy of this that they can work with? Yes? Okay. So what you need to do is you actually need to have the path together. So this is what a lot of people did. A lot of people actually built this figure looking like this, and they drew the path on this, and then they took this image right here, this layer, and they drug it onto the metal path. So I'm going to show you what that actually looked like. So let me open up just the metal path. Hang on one second. So then this is what people did. So they had the figure here that was, had the path, and they loaded the path as a selection, and then they applied it as a layer mask, and this is it with the layer mask on it. And then they took this layer and they drug it over to the metal and let go here, and then they either rescaled it, or here, I'll just rescale it really quick. And they rescaled it, and that's all fine and well, except for this image now no longer has the path. The girl, it's been orphaned. So the better way of doing that would have been to instead take the metal, and I'm going to select everything in the metal. So I'm going to just hold down the Shift key to select all the layers. I'm going to click on the little flyout menu, and I'm going to group this from layers. call it metal, and say, okay, this has now got all of those layers inside of it. And then you take this and drag it over to the girl image. Holding down your shift key will bring it in centered. Now the girl is underneath the metal. I need her on top of that, so I'm just going to move her on top. And then the metal is too small. So again, the person who actually did this fell just enlarged it. They just transferred it. But this way you end up with the path is actually here. So, but that can't be the only issue that we run into in this. So for instance, and this is what I want everyone to do, I want you to go to your path and just click on it and see if it actually outlines the image. It should. If you've moved your image, it won't. If you've transformed your image, it won't. But other than that, it should actually match up. Does everyone's match up? Okay, so here's the problem. Click outside of the path. So I'm going to click in the area just below these guys so that the path is no longer selected. Take this image and we are going to move it. Hit the V key and actually just slide this whole image to the side. And then go back to that path and turn it on again. And you can see you've also lost the registration of this. So that's not going to help us. That's not going to work. So I'm going to undo these moves so that they are realigned again. So just go back in your history to undo those parts. I'm going to show you another problem that we have. So again, click on that top layer. And we are now going to transform this. Hit Command T to transform it. So we're transforming the figure. And we are going to click on the link between the width and the height, and I'm just going to make it smaller. It doesn't matter how much smaller you make it, just smaller. And hit the check mark to, again, apply that, and then go back to your path palette and click on this thing again. And this is the other problem that we have. When we did a transform, it's no longer in register with the path because the image that we have is actually smaller. So we need to solve all of these problems, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do that right now. So I'm going to go back in terms of my layer visibility so that they are indeed aligned again. I'm going to go back to my layer. The one that's actually got, this is a pixel mask on here, and you can tell it's a pixel mask because it's the background is black and the figure is white in here. We're going to put another mask on here. So go to your path palette, click on it, click on the path to actually make it active. Go back to your layers palette and click on to add another mask. And what will happen is it's going to add a second mask on top of this. But this second mask is actually a vector mask. This is made using your path. So your path, the path that had been made is actually on this layer right now. And to see it, or to actually see it right now, it is in action because it's got brackets around it, but they're both in action right now. Both of these masks are actually controlling this thing. So if you hold down your shift key and you click on the pixel mask, you have now turned that off, but the path, the vector path is now in control. And you can see it's in control because of how sharp this edge is. If I undo this, if I'm holding down the shift key and clicking to bring the pixel mask back, and then still holding down the shift key, click on the vector mask to get rid of it, you can see this mask was actually, the pixel mask was actually softened, but the vector mask is not. If I, again, hold down my shift key and click on this, you can see it sharpens it up again, and it certainly, if I disable the pixel mask, it does. Vector masks can be softened, but it's an illusion because the truth of it is, a path is just a mathematical description of a line, and it's very precise. There is no softening of the edges. However, Photoshop has now built in softening, so you can see right up here, you can actually feather the edge of a vector mask, and it's right up here in your properties part. You can click on the feather, and you can see you can completely soften it like crazy. But the more important thing is that with this done like this now, I'm going to go ahead and disable the vector mask and turn on the pixel mask. I'm going to double click on the hand to kick back out. We can now transform this thing. So Command T to actually do a transform. Click on the link between the width and the height. Take the scrubby slider over the H and just make it smaller. But look what has now happened. Not only is the image smaller, the pixel mask is smaller, but the vector mask is smaller as well. If you go to your path palette right now, you will see there is a small version, and this is a complete intact mask with, path with all of the points. Everything else about that is all here. So if I go back into here and I just say, okay, that's going to be my transform right now, I'm going to open up that metal copy again. So this is the metal copy, and now I can actually take this layer and drag it on top of my metal. So just the opposite of what I was telling everyone to do. Hold down the shift key and let go, and this actually brings this now into the metal. But you will see, because it brought in this vector mask as well, it's also brought in all of the path with it. And if you click on the path now, you will actually see, if we zoom in on this, if you uncheck the, if you make it visible again, click on this, and then click on the path, and then grab your path selection tool and click, you can see all of the points are here on your path. You can go in and you can modify it, you can do everything else. So it's a way to keep it all together. So when people do complex paths, whatever it is you're selecting out, you always want to add that to the layer so that if you move the layer, if I go back into my image here, this original one, and I decide to move this entire figure, so I'm going to just hit the V key to move it, the path actually moves with it because it's anchored to it. So the path just moved as well. It's all still there. Now, this path, as it is right now, is, you'll see it's right here. It's saying it's a copy on the vector mask itself. If you want to save this so it looks more like these other paths here, all you need to do is drag the path down to the little plus, the box with the plus in the middle of it, and it will actually make a copy called work path, and then I would actually call this, you know, small body or whatever. Is this making sense to everyone? Are we good on this part? All right. So I can close that part up. I don't need to save that. You can close yours up. You don't need to save that. Okay, what you do need to do is start your homework right now. So we are going to go through, this is going to be the last time that we do it, but if you go to your session 6 right now, inside the assignment folder, I'm sorry, it's going to be session 7, not 6. Session 7, inside your assignment folder, there is a copy of this TIFF, and then there's also a JPEG that's got retouching notes on it. If I can get you to open both of those, that would be great. All right, so the first thing is actually the figure. So the figure that the assignment for this week is to actually completely retouch this figure. If you go to the small JPEG that is in here, these are the retouching notes, and I just want to go over these really quickly. We talked about retouching notes last week and retouching form. We did look at that retouching form last week, didn't we? Yep, okay. So the retouching notes here say, and they are, you know, you need to take these with a certain grain of salt. So fill in the hair right here. So it's, you can sort of see this, this sort of like, it's sort of a bit of a high hairline here. So I just want you to fill this in so that this whole area right here doesn't look fake. However, I don't want to see this like new set of hair right here crash into this old set of hair. So if you leave this like borderline right here, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for this to be a seamless change in the hair. To clean up the eyebrows, again, there's little stray hairs in here to fix. You'll see that there's red in her skin right here, whereas right next to it, it's not red. You need to balance out not only the color, but the tone. So down here, remove the stray eyelashes. There's really wonky eyelashes that are flying off in different directions. I want you to clean those up. To smooth out the skin, that's a texture issue right here. To then remove the small, fine little hairs here. To remove the smile lines here. There is not one on the other side because the highlight is on the other side. She's got contact lenses. You can see them right here. Those contact lens shadows need to be removed. You need to get rid of the veins that are in this eye. You need to, again, even out skin tone. So this isn't just a question of texture here. This is also a question of coloration. The same thing right here. So then clean up around the nose. That area is right in here. Then fix her teeth. There are two problems with her teeth. One is she's actually missing a tooth right here. That's what it says here. So that you need to add the missing tooth into this area right here. But the other is her teeth are crossed. You need to uncross them. So there's a small hair right in here, all of this stuff. In this last note where it says fix the lip, it's not, I've had people go in here and remove all of the lines and the wrinkles in her lips. She looks like a freak show if you do that. Those are real. You don't do that. It's just these small pieces of dead skin that are up here that I want you to eliminate. It's not to get rid of these highlights. These highlights are just like catchlights in eyes. If you remove all of these highlights, she be dead. Don't do that. Questions about any of this? Okay. Don't worry. I'm going to help you guys out in a big way. So we've talked earlier about all of this. I know I've given you the example of I've got 10 full-length fashion shots and $500 to have them retouch it. Would you take that job? And some people said yes. Some people said no. Will said she would. That's what she would do it for, right? And I said, well, the real trick to doing that is that if you charge it by image, right? So $50 an image, and you in your own mind have budgeted 2 hours to do it, you're thinking that's how long it's going to take, but you don't quote it that way. You simply quote it as a per image retouch, and you can get that stuff done in a half an hour, then you quadrupled your money. That's not $500 for a half hour's work? Who in this room would say no to that? Yeah. Oh. Anthony would, but no, I'm just kidding. No. So that's one extreme. And then the other extreme is, how did the tonal retouching go? Long? Yeah. Long, painful, whatever. Did anybody get all the way through it? People in my other class got through it, and there's one that was so unbelievably stunning. The guy who did it has actually he could charge $2,000 a day to retouch right now. I mean, that's how impressive it was. It can be done. All just throwing that out there. However, that is what that is, right? Takes incredibly long time to do it. But if you get there, it can actually, it'll give you such an incredible sense of satisfaction, and it will blow you away. It really will blow you away. However, there's a thing in the middle, and the thing in the middle is what we're going to do today and talk about. So we're going to do frequency separation today. It's a method of retouching. How many people in this room have ever done frequency separation work? All right, I'm just going to lay this out here right now. I'm getting ready to change the other 8 people in here, whatever. I'm going to change your life today, like in a huge way. So anyway, in order to get to there, though, we actually need to, you can close up the notes right now. We actually need to do a real knockout and spill removal of this image right here. And so I want to go ahead and do that part with you. It will be the last time we go through this. So it's going to be the last time where we actually do selections and methods of selections and all of that kind of stuff. You will use selections for the rest of the semester, but this is the last time that we're actually going to go after this really focus on building the selection and doing the selection here in class. All right, so we are going to do this using a zero selective color. So how many people still have that action on their computer? Okay, so for the rest of you, I want you to make this thing. You will use this thing for the rest of your life. It's not just for knocking out green screens. It's actually making selections of highlights, making selections of shadow areas, making selections of different color areas. I mean, you can use this tool for a whole lot of things. It's not just about this. So that's what we're going to start with now. We're going to make an action for this. Please save it. So to do it, your action palette has to be showing. Is everybody showing, or is anybody's not showing? Mine is right next to my history palette. Are we all good? Okay. So to do this, click on the Action tab, and then there is a menu that's right to the right of that. If you click on that, you'll get a flyout menu, and you can come and say New Action, and then you're going to name this thing, and I'm going to call mine Zero Selective Color, Zero SEL Color. And I'm going to make mine number, somebody shout out a quick number between 1 and 100. What? 22? Okay, I'm going to make mine 22. You don't need to make yours 22. I've just got 1,000 of these, and I'm trying to figure out which one this is going to be distinct. Okay, and then where it's going to go. If you have not ever added grouping folders for your actions, then you'll only have default. If you do want to add different groups, you come over to your actions palette, and down at the very bottom, there's something that looks like a little file folder. If you click on that, it'll open up and it'll allow you to name it. So you can see for me in my set, I've got retouching actions, I've got check layer sets, I've got image effect actions, texture actions. So anyway, that's just what that's about. But you can, right now, until you really get a whole lot of actions, leaving it in the defaults will work just fine. It's just an organization thing. It doesn't have any impact on the action at all. You can also add function keys, and you can color code your actions. We're not going to do any of that. I'm just going to click on the record button. With the record button now clicked, you'll notice at the bottom of your actions palette, there's a little red button. That little red button is indicating that you are recording right now, and it will record every move you make, no matter what it is, it will record it. So we're going to start by adding adjustment layers. So I'm going to come over to my layers palette. I'm going to click on the little circle at the bottom that's half black and half white. That is my adjustment layer icon. Click on it, and I'm going to come up, and the first one I'm going to add is hue saturation. And then I'm going to go right back to the same place. I'm going to add a second adjustment layer. So click on that again, and you're going to add a selective color. When you get selective color on there, you're going to actually come up at the very top, and you should have a set of colors drop-down menu right here, and it should be at its default, which is red. It's the very top color in the whole list. You're going to take the black ink slider at the very bottom, and you are going to drag it all the way to the right. So now what we've just done is that anything that is red in this image, we just filled it with black ink. And then you need to do that for every single color and every single tone in this drop-down menu. So I'm going to drop down to the yellows, click and drag the black slider only all the way to the right. And the green, black slider all the way to the right. You never touch the cyan, magenta, yellow sliders at all. It's just this drop-down menu and the black slider. And you keep going until you get all the way through all the colors, and then also all the tones. So whites are actually highlights, neutrals are actually midtones, and then blacks are actually shadows. And your image should look black. If it looks solarized, it's because you've got this relative radio button clicked. You want to click on absolute. And then we want to come over to the action palette and click on the little square that is just to the left of that red record button. If you click on that, it will stop the recording. And then we would need to try our action out. So throw away both of those adjustment layers that it just built, or that we used to build this, and then come over and find your zero selective color. When you want to run an action, you need to select the parent. So if you take a look at my screen right here, what I'm talking about, parent, this is actually the name of the action. The action itself is right underneath it. It's inside of this thing. But if you start inside this thing, your action will not work properly. You need to click on the parent and actually run it from there. You can also collapse this. You don't need to see what are all the steps inside of the action. So click on that just to make it active, and then the way you run it, it's the little arrow that points to the right in the very bottom of your actions palette. Click on that, and it should run the action for you. Now you'll see in my case, it's actually made the image solarized. It's because, I don't know, there's a bug in here. It's always worked this way. It just means I need to change the radio button from relative to absolute, and I'm good to go. So I don't bother to adjust the action or go in and try and fix it or rebuild it. It's just as simple to do that, because I'm going to be in this properties panel to do this anyway. So then I'm going to come up to the drop-down menu again, and I'm going to go up to greens. And then I'm going to take that black slider, because right now I'm filling all of my greens with black ink. But if I take this slider and take it all the way to the left, I'm actually then filling it with white ink. Now you'll see that the background certainly got lighter, but it didn't get white. And the reason it's not white is because there is, it's not a pure green. So that's why I have this hue saturation layer that's underneath it. If you click on the hue saturation layer underneath it, even though this appears to be a black and white image, this image doesn't get to be, if you think about our layer stack, it starts out with the image, it goes to hue saturation, and then to selective color. Well, the selective color that's on the top is what's made this thing a black and white image. The hue saturation layer underneath that still understands that there is green in the image that is below it. So this hue saturation will still work, even though to you and me it doesn't look like there's any green in here. There still is, as far as this adjustment layer is concerned. So I'm going to click on this, and then I'm going to use the targeting adjustment tool. It's the little hand up in the properties panel that's got fingers that are pointing left and right. If you click on that and then come over onto your image, you will get an eyedropper on your image. And when you get that, if you click, it will actually set. This, as you can see, this group of color bars that are down here at the very bottom. This is the range that we just selected, and it's based on that point that we just clicked. So again, if you click and you drag to the right, it saturates the green. If you drag to the left, it desaturates the green. And once you completely desaturate the green, there is no green anymore, so we're back to a black image. But at any rate, take it all the way to the right. But now you need to zoom in, and I like to zoom in to where the really fine hairs are right here. I'm looking in this area right in here. If you guys remember, the very first time we did this with the girl who was on green screen in the black sparkly dress, when we used this, push the saturation point way up high, all of a sudden part of her hair actually started to go white. It ended up being actually lighter than the background. That is too aggressive a move. She has blonde hair. That's part of the reason. So it was light to begin with. There was enough spill in her hair that it also, when we did this push in green, it actually saturated the color that was the spill that was in her hair, and her hair went white, which meant we were going to lose it in the mask. But in this case, that's not happening. So again, if we take the saturation slider and just pull it back and forth now, you can see we're not actually losing any of that hair part here. So, and we're also, the best part is that we're picking up, it's opening up some of this background that's actually behind her hair, which is something that we really want to do. So in this case, this is actually good exactly the way it is. So I need to make a copy of this. This is going to be the beginning of my mask. To do that, you just select either the red, the green, or the blue channel. It does not matter which one. They're all identical. The one that's not identical is the RGB channel at the top. But you can't copy an RGB channel. This is actually an illusion up here. This is not a real channel. If you click on it and try and drag it down to the little box with this plus in the middle, you'll see it cannot make a copy of it because it's not real. But you can do it with the red or the green or the blue. So I'm just going to click on the red and drag it down to the square that's got the plus in it. It will make a copy of this, and I'm going to double click on that red copy and rename it Knockout. So again, please do this with me now, because this will be your homework, and I'm saving you an hour of your homework right now. So if you get lost, stop me. Okay. So this is the beginning of it. These two layers have done everything they need to do, so I'm going to get rid of them. It's just housekeeping, so I don't need those guys, so I'm going to throw both adjustment layers away. And then I'm going to go to work on this knockout layer to begin with. I'm going to zoom in here to show you a couple of things, just because I know they're here. It looks like this image is largely black. If you hover your cursor over the middle of it, I'm in the middle of her face right now, you'll see in your readout up at the top you're getting zeros. However, if you look close enough, you can see there's actually catch lights in her eyes that are in here. Now, I'm not going to fix those right now because I'm going to see what happens in some other areas once I start to look around in this image a little bit more. However, what I do know that I have to clean out is this area that's right down here. So I'm now in the lower right-hand part of the image, and it's this background right here. You can see it's full of contamination. This has not gone pure white back here, and I need it to go that way. So I'm going to do the same trick that we've done before when we were working with channels. I'm going to put down a color sampler point. So again, click on the little eyedropper tool to get the flyout menu and come down to color sampler tool. Make sure that your sample size is a 3x3, not a point sample and not anything larger than that. Some people will go back and forth, especially in an issue like this one right here. They might go to a 5x5, but I think a 3x3 will be fine enough for us on here. And then what I'm looking for on this background here is the darkest place that I can find in the background. So you can actually hover around and you can look at your readout here. So anything that gets I'm looking for the lowest number that I can get because that'll be the darkest. So I'm getting around 199s. That's about the best that I can get here. So I'm going to drop a point right there to actually do that. And then I'm going to hit Command L to bring up my levels dialog box. If you cannot remember Command L, all you need to do, again, it's not an adjustment layer, it's an adjustment. Come up to your image menu, down to adjustments, and then pick levels. It's the same thing, brings up the same dialog box. So then I'm going to grab my white point slider here, and I'm going to start to drag towards the middle, and I'm just watching these readout numbers here, but my readout numbers are still in K. Now, I know K well enough, I can work in it. I could take this, what I would be looking for would be a 0%, because again, this is about black ink, and white would be 0% black ink. But for most of us, it's easier just to work with RGB numbers, so I'm going to click on the little eyedropper number 1, get the flyout menu, and come down to RGB color. And then you can see I'm at a 242 right here, so I'm going to continue to drag that towards the center. And I'm going to get near 255, but stop. I'm going to go to my arrow keys right now and just tap it in till I get to 255. Don't tap it one more tap. It's the minimum amount that you actually need to get there. And then before I do anything else, I'm going to take a look around. So I'm going to hold down my space bar to get the hand, and I can move my image around. And as soon as I move it around, I can see there's an area in the upper right-hand corner here that still has contamination in it. So this has not gone far enough. So I can still also use my keyboard shortcuts for zoom in and zoom out. So I'm going to hold down my space bar, Command and Option, and then I'm going to zoom out slightly. And then if you want to move your point, so I want to move this number 1 point. It cleaned out this area, but there's the area in the very top that's not been cleaned out. So if you hover over the number, hold down your Shift key, it will change into a little arrow that'll allow you to click on it and move it. And I'm going to move mine up into the upper right-hand corner. So I'm looking in this area up in here, and you can see I've gone back up to a 252. I'm going to move it around in there a little bit more. I'm trying to get the darkest spot that's in there. And so up, if I get even further to up in kind of the corner, whatever, I've got a 246 right now, and now it's actually reading a 242. So I have further to go. So I'm going to continue to grab that white point slider and drag towards the center. And I'm going to get close to 255 again and go to my arrow keys again. And that's actually now I've just gotten there. So I'm going to zip into this area, and I want to take a look and make sure that I'm not being too aggressive on this fine little hair that's in here. So I'm going to use my preview check mark and turn it on and off. And you can see that's hitting some of this hair pretty hard. I'm looking back at this. I feel like I'm losing a little bit too much of that. I'm going to back this off slightly. So I'm just going to click on my white point slider, and I'm going to start to use my up arrow key. You got to have preview on. My up arrow key till I bring back in just a little bit of that hair. So I've got this part that's back into here, and again, I'm going to use my preview check mark on and off, and now I feel like I'm cleaning out most of the background, but I'm also keeping most of that fine hair. So I am still going to stay in my levels. I'm not going to say okay to that yet. I'm going to zip back out now to see what else I can see going on in here. And what I pick up here, if you go now to the complete opposite side of her head, all of a sudden there is parts of that black that are really showing up seriously right here. I can see this stuff right here. So I want to put, and you can see, and this is not just shine, this is a lot in her hair. So I'm going to go for the lightest point that's actually in her hair, hold down my my Shift key, and click and put another point down there. So again, I've still got my levels dialog box open. I didn't have to close it. I'm going to click on this point number 2 drop down and say I want to read this in RGB color, and then it's reading in the 5. So I'm just going to grab my my black point slider, move it slightly, and then immediately go to my arrow keys and tap this in until I get to 0. that's actually bumped up. You can see I'm only in the 244s on my other side, but I don't want to change those. I did that deliberately. I knew that that was what I was doing because I wanted to salvage these hairs. So at this stage of the game, I'm feeling pretty good about this. I'm going to turn this on and off. Yep, that's looking pretty good. So if you want the exact same numbers that I have, I ended up with a 17 for my black point and a 193 for my white point. And I'm going to go ahead and say okay to that. I'm going to take a look around now just a little bit. Again, I've still got the catch lights in her eyes. I can see that right there. So I'm going to fix that really quickly. I'm going to hit the, well, here, let's do this. If you think about what this mask is ready to do right now, it's, if we used it, it would actually be hiding the figure and showing the background. The figure is black, the background is white. I need to invert this. So you can do it right now. Command I. And then sometimes it's easier to see contamination when you actually do that part. So I'm looking around these parts of her hair. I think parts of this are background, parts of this are not. We're going to figure what that is. I was really looking for the catch lights in her eyes, but I don't see those anymore. I do have stuff up in here. That part all looks good. That part all looks good. That part all looks good. Yeah. All right. So we're going to see where we're actually at with this guy. So I'm going to double click on the hand to kick back out. I'm going to go up to the very top and click on RGB. So now I want to put this girl on white background. So I'm going to add the white background right now on top of my virgin. To do that, click on an adjustment layer, and we are going to add a solid color adjustment layer. And again, there's a million ways to get to white. You can actually click on the brightness slider and crank it all the way up, and then do the saturation and drag it all the way down. That would be white. Or you can type in 255 white, red, 255 green, 255 blue. That would be another way. But I'm just going to say OK to that. And then I'm going to make a duplicate of this background layer. So select it and do Command J, and then drag that up onto the very top. So now I've actually got, again, my background layer, the virgin, I'm not touching. I've got a white layer that's sitting on top of it. And then finally, I've got the one that I'm actually going to use this knockout sitting on top of that. So then I'm going to come back over to my knockout. I'm going to hold down my Command key and click to load that as a selection, and then simply apply it as a layer mask.
Did you combine the hue and saturation and selective color layer?
I threw them away.
Oh,
And so this is the beginning of my knockout, and you can see what I was really going for. If you take a look up here, I've still got all of these beautiful fine little hairs, and that is the mark of a really good knockout, especially if you're doing this kind of work, because it's believable. A lot of what I saw you guys turn in, I would say back and forth to you, over to you, back again and again and again. Your mask is too aggressive, your mask is too aggressive, your mask is too aggressive. I'm going to show you what, because I can still do it on this mask to show you, give you the illusion. I'm going to hit this again with levels.
When did we add the color fill mask?
You mean the solid color layer?
Yeah.
Right before we applied the mask. Here, I'll take you back. All right, so you do have the layer mask, right?
Yes.
All right, fine. So come over to your layer. We're going to click on the circle that's half black and half white, and you're going to come up and you are going to add a solid color adjustment layer. And then again, you just need to make it white. So we can type 255 red, tab key 255 green, tab key 255 blue, which makes it white, and you're good. Although that still looks like that has color in it, but it doesn't. And then you need to duplicate your background layer, so Command J, and then drag that background layer on top of that solid color. Come back over to your knockout, hold down the Command key and click on the thumbnail, which will load it as a selection, and then apply it as a layer mask. But what I was saying is, watch what happens. I can run levels on this mask again, and you'll see what I mean by being too aggressive. So Command L to bring up the levels dialog box, and I'm going to really go after it. And that's what happened to a lot of you guys. That is not a good mask. That is a chopped up, way over too aggressive mask. So it just gives you some idea what that whole levels part, it's the tricky one, but that's the one nonetheless. So I'm going to double click on the hand. Right now I need you to save your work. So up to the file menu, down to save as, And again, you can save this as a TIFF file or as a Photoshop file. The TIFF file will hold and contain all of the paths and the layers and adjustment layer, all that kind of stuff. It exists in a TIFF file or a Photoshop file. Do not at this stage of the game go to this large document format. It is a Photoshop file, but it has it's designed for Photoshop files that are over 2 gigabytes in size, and it takes up more room. So again, Photoshop file or TIFF file, either one, and then again, put this somewhere where you can save it, because this will be your homework. So I'm gonna save mine. And then I think it's a good time for a break. It's been that kind of morning. So I've got 2:17 right now. We've lost some time today. Let's keep it at a hard 10, be back at 2:27.
Does it matter that I open the image as a smart object?
It will,
Okay,
but don't worry, we'll show you how to fix that.
okay.
Get on the sign-in sheet, and I need to give you a file, because I'm gonna give you where we are right now, so you can continue to work on this. Great, plug this guy in. It looks like you have a good version of this already, but I want you to continue to work on this version. And you can use that for the assignment that's coming up, or you can do the one I'm gonna give you right now. It's, I think, this one right there, not the one above it, no, that one right there. You can actually just open it right now, straight into Photoshop, and then save it wherever you're gonna save it. That's not it though, that's the one that you've been working on. And then try to open that guy again. Let's see what version of Photoshop that you are. Oh, here, let's do this. Do an open with and pick that. Yes.
Yeah, but they're really cool. Sometimes when I open the ones that have the like dot underscore, it doesn't work.
Oh, you can change the file
So I
name.
can-
It's this one right up here though. Change that name. All right. So did everybody save a copy of this file? Okay. So Sierra brought up a interesting point. She's actually got hers right now as a smart object. If yours is a smart object, again, you would want to leave the virgin down at the very bottom as a smart object. There's no reason to change that. It's not a raw file though, so there's not really that big of advantage to keeping it as a smart object. But nonetheless, click on the top layer one, the one that we need to actually then remove the spill on, and you're just going to rasterize it. So you come up to the layer menu, down to smart object, down to rasterize. It will be, it will not be grayed out because it'll be, mine's grayed out right now because this is not a smart object. Or you come down to rasterize smart object. It's the same thing. That little icon in the lower right-hand corner will go away and you will actually be able to work directly on the file. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do here is try to check out this edge. I'm looking on her left-hand side, and this dark edge that we've got right on the side right here, the only way to get rid of this is to choke this. We've got to choke this to get rid of this part. Now on the other side, you can see it's even breaking up even more. The reason it looks so broken up on this side is the image is it's falling out of focus. So there's relatively narrow depth of field on this image, and so this is actually going out of focus. We got to fix all of those problems, and then obviously the spill we have to fix as well. But I'm going to go after the choke part of this first to fix that, and then we'll see what happens on this other side. We probably it's the choke that I'm going to use to get rid of it on this side will probably not fix everything on this other side. So anyway, that's how I'm going to do it. So to do the choke, we need to employ history. So again, the first thing you're going to do is click on your history tab, and then just do this really quickly, because again, people keep screwing this part, not screwing it up, but not for whatever reason, it doesn't seem to be holding. If you click on your flyout menu for your history tab and come down to history options, this will open up, and you want to make sure that you have these 4 check boxes checked. The allow first, create first snapshot is on always by default. You automatically create new snapshot when saving. You want to put that one on. Then show new snapshot dialog by default. That's what we're going to use right now. And then make layer visibility changes undoable and say OK. Now, if you go up to the very top of your history palette right now, you'll see that there are several history states that you've already got that are timestamped. So that is the consequence of having this option checked right here, this automatically create new snapshot when saving. These things are invaluable. If you are working, remember your retouching is now only remembering 50 states. So if you go into a marathon retouching session and you're retouching 3, 4, 5 hours, whatever that is, you've gone way beyond. You've got hundreds and hundreds of states that are in there. But if you've been periodically saving your stuff, then you have history states that will be timestamped for what your image looked like at that given time. And the advantage of that is that if all of a sudden you realize something horrible has happened to your image, you realize that, oh my God, I erased part of her face and there's no way for me to get that back, whatever. You can go back your 50 history states, and if you found the problem, then that's great. You just need to go back wherever it was to the one state before it and then pick up where you left off. But a lot of times it can be hours ago that you made this mistake. So you then, once you go through your history states, start going through your stamped, saved states one at a time. Start with the one that's on the very bottom one. This will be the newest one. And you go back through those, again, trying to find out where the problem that something went wrong. It can be a massive time saver. So I want everybody aware that these things exist and you should leverage them. But for me right now, I'm going to create a history state. So I'm going to click on the little camera icon at the bottom, and a dialog box should open up. Does anybody not have this little new snapshot dialog box open? You have an older version of Photoshop then. So that's your problem. So you can fix that, but it's tricky, so I'll tell you how to do it. So yours is already clicked, so hang on just one second. I'm going to rename mine pre-choke and say OK to that. So for you, need to go all the way to the top. There will be a thing up here that says Snapshot 1. Click on it. You can rename it. and call it pre-choke. But now before you do anything, you'll see that all of your history now has been grayed out. You need to go all the way to the bottom of this and click the last state. That's the problem of not having that dialog show up, is that if you don't remember, you can rename the history states, that's fine. But if you don't remember to select all your history back again, the very first move you make will erase all of your history and start you over brand new, and you don't want that to happen. Okay, so then I'm actually going to choke this thing. So you need to select the layer mask that we're actually doing this on. So go ahead and select layer mask, and then we are going to choke it. Our first move, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit on mine, a little bit more. The first thing we have to do, if you hold down your option key and click on it, you can see there's my transition from black to white is pretty strong. There's a few shades of gray in here. I need more shades of gray to actually do the choke in here. So you can actually do this without watching your image. It's a little bit more difficult, but once you get used to it, you can do it without actually having to look at your image. But at any rate, so again, make sure that your mask is what is selected. Come up to the filter menu, down to blur, down to Gaussian blur, and I'm going to set mine down to a 1. So this is how I do bigger jumps in mine. I don't like slidey little handle things. I don't like those things. I like numbers. So anyway, I keep my right hand on the delete key or the backspace key if you're on Windows. And then a 1 I know is not enough. So I'm going to hit delete for that and type in a 2, and that makes more. That's still not enough. Delete and a 3. That's better. A delete and a 4. The 4 might be a little too aggressive. I'm going to delete and go back to 3. So I'm going to blur this with a 3-pixel blur. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK to that. And then again, if you hold down your option key and click, you can see I've added more shades of gray in between in this transition. So now when I run levels on this, what levels allow me to do is either make those in between shades of gray black or white. If I make them white, my image mask will expand. That's called spreading. If I make those in between grays black, my mask will actually shrink. That's what's called choking. So again, I'm going to watch this happen in real time. Make sure you're still working on your mask. Command L to bring up the levels dialog box. And again, I'm going to grab my black slider and start to pull it towards the center. And you'll see that it starts to pull in and it starts to choke in, again, what we're calling choking. It's actually starting to remove that line. And you got to get pretty aggressive about this one. I'm around a 215 for that point. You can use your preview mark to turn this on and off to actually see what's happening. And so for me, for this side, this is actually working pretty well. Again, if you want the exact same numbers I've got, it was a 215 for my black point, and I'm going to leave my white point exactly where it is. And I'm going to say OK to that. And then immediately, you need to make another history snapshot. So click on the little snapshot, the little camera at the bottom of your history palette. We're going to call this post choke. And say OK. And then immediately you want to undo this. So if you go to your history palette, you want to go back to when we did the add layer mask and the save as. So one step before the Gaussian blur. It will bring back the choke that we have on here that is, the edge line that we're trying to get. It'll bring all of that back, which is fine because that post choke, well here, if you go back again to the bottom of your history where you did levels, what the state looks like, zoom back out and look what this did to her hair. That is not acceptable to us. So again, I'm going to go back 2 steps in history. So this brings back all my problems, but now I can use those history states to get rid of them. So I'm going to come down to my history state that says post choke. Do not select the history state. That will take us into that place. It'll be, her hair will be fucked up, all of that. This is not what you want to do. You simply want to click on the box that's to the left of the little icon that says post choke. Click on that. That will now allow us to use our history brush to paint this image the way it looked when the choke had already happened. I'm going to go to my tablet now. If you don't have your tablet here today, it's not the end of the world, but if you do, it's always a good move to get practice. So I'm going to go to my tablet and make sure that your make sure that your mask is actually still active. Because even though we are going to use history, we need to actually have it working on, we need to be working on the part of the image that we want to be working on for that history state. So I'll wait.
My pen isn't working for some reason. It worked earlier today.
Let's go to your settings. Apple menu. No, Apple menu. And come down to no settings. Yeah, there you go. And go all the way to the bottom on the right side and click on Welcome Tablet. And it says you are not connected.
Literally, I was using my break.
And there you are. You can jump out of there, you know, you don't need to, it just, it's the, you know, your adapter to plug in something. Okay. So to get to your history brush, it's right underneath your, the clone stamp tool. So click on it again, use the little dropout lower right hand corner because there are two brushes in here. Just make sure you have the history brush, it's on the very top. In terms of the brush hardness, I'm going to do mine at a 50%. You don't really need to worry about this because the history is really controlling this to begin with. I take that back. I'm actually put it at a 0% because I need to feather out of history once I get up near this girl's hair. So go ahead and set it at a hardness of 0. You can use blending modes in history. We don't need to do that, but you can use them just so you know. Normal blending mode, 100% opacity, 100% flow. And then I'm going to zoom in to this area. I'm going to start up by her ear, the problem area of her ear. This part that's right in here. Now, what you can see, I'm going to start down here actually on the lower part where her ear actually meets her cheek. You can just run this along like this and it will actually get rid of all of that stuff. But the problem I get is that I need to, at some point up here, stop. So take a look at my screen. I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. With a softer brush, I'm going to keep this one little part, this little curl of hair. I'm going to keep that, but I want to get rid of this garbage that's underneath it. So I'm just going to start in here and come down on an angle to get rid of that part. And it's not really that obvious when I do that. So I'm getting rid of all the rest of that part. So I'm feathering out into where history ends, or where it begins and where it ends. So then again, you can make your brush really large now and just whack through the rest of this. At this stage of the game, I feel like I want to go to the pasteboard. So hit your F key. It just allows you to make sure that you've gotten everything down on the end, because now we can use cursors off. So I'm also going to do the same thing on the other side. However, on this other side, I'm going to start where her collar is. That is still also slightly out of focus, so I don't want to use a completely hard brush here, but I don't think I want to use a completely soft one either. So I'm going to go to a 50% hardness here. So my brush is a little bit soft, and then I'm going to just trace this line to run right down here to get rid of that skanky hair that's on that side. And then I'm going to start here, and I'm going to work my way up this whole line again on the other side. We're just going to keep going up and see what this line ends up looking like. I know I've got to get rid of some of it, but... And once I get up to her ear, I'm going to do that same trick again. There's a spot right here where I can see there's a hair it's coming out. Again, I'm going to soften my brush up completely again. And then I'm going to try to keep that one strong strand of hair right there, but I want to get rid of everything that's actually underneath that. So I'm just going to come out like this. And then the rest of this I can take out. So I'm doing, and you can get rid of all the hair that's sitting down, the stuff that's actually floating out in space. This is not that great of a line if you take a look at it. The edge of her face, it looks really pebbly to me, really bumpy to me. So I need to fix that part, but I can get rid of all the rest of this part first. But this edge right here, you can see, it did the choke, but it kept in too much of that pebbly, whatever, weird shit. So I've got to fix this. To do this, we're going to do it with the pen tool. Hit the P key to get the tool. I'm going to start up here on this part of her ear, and I'm going to do the first loop, and then I'm going to work my way down here. So watch how I do this really quickly, because again, it's quick shortcuts to do this. I do not do this with a tablet. I'm going to do this using my trackpad. If I was at home, I have a mouse. I would definitely do this with a mouse. The mouse is the best tool that you can do the pen tool, the path work with. So I'm going to start down here on the edge of her ear. I'm going to click, and I'm actually going to use that to give me that the curved part of her ear. I don't like where that shaped is. I don't like where this last tool, where the second point landed. So if you hold down the Command key, you will temporarily get the white arrow, and you can move this to get it in a better spot, which I'm going to do. And then you can just continue. So this is the part I wanted you to watch. Again, there were some of you who, when doing your path work, you were just putting in straight line after straight line after straight line. And the people who really didn't know how to use the tool were doing 100,000 points, because all those little bitty straight lines they actually could use to fake a curve. You don't need to do that. What you need to do is I'm bringing my tool out now. I'm going to click and drag and put in just a little bit of bend in here, not much, but just a little bit. It just keeps it a little bit more organic. And then because the path line that I was dragging is pretty much exactly where I want to go, you don't need to get rid of that second point, and you can just continue to just click and drag down. So that's what I'm going to continue to do. And I'm going to work my way down here. Again, I haven't gotten rid of a point yet. I'm going to set one point here and then another on this side to actually get that bend at where her cheek is meeting her neck. And then I can continue to just work my way down. Again, putting in little bends here, little bends there, just to keep this thing a little bit more organic feeling. It just doesn't look so cut out. And then once I get down here to where her neck is actually going to meet the collar, I'm going to then just click a point and not drag, and then come straight out. And then I can complete the path. I'm just going to run my way up here till I get back to the original path up at her ear and click. So this is the path I'm going to use to clean up this side of her face. I'm going to go to my path palette now, and I'm going to double click on work path, and I'm going to call it left cheek. And then I'm going to give you guys a couple of minutes to finish. Is everybody there? Okay, so then I'm going to hover over the thumbnail of left cheek, hold down my Command key, and click, and it'll load it as a selection. So I'm going to go back to my mask on my layer right now, and now remember what I'm trying to do. I don't want to see this jagged edge, so I need to fill my path with black. In this selection area, I need to fill it with black to hide that. However, if I do that right now, I have not softened up this edge. If I do it right now, what's going to happen is I'm going to have a really sharp line there, which does not make sense because that line is out of focus. That area is supposed to have some softness to it. If I don't, what I'm saying is that, okay, that's in sharp focus, which does not make sense, because the rest, if you look at her ear, or if you look at the collar, those are not in sharp focus, but all of a sudden her neck and her face are. That would not make any sense. So before you actually apply this, we're going to soften up that selection a little bit. To do that, go up to the Select menu, come down to Modify, down to Feather, and I'm going to put in a 2-pixel feather on this. I'm going to hit this pretty hard. Now, if it turns out that it's too hard, you just go back in history and you do it again and you put in a different value. If you figure that it's too soft, again, you do the same thing. You go back in history and you just increase the pixel. But I think it's a pretty good guess. We'll see. So again, I need to fill this area with black. Black is my foreground color, so Option Delete will actually fill it. Command D will deselect. And I can look at this right now, and the part that I'm having a problem with is just this little area right here. I like the edge. I feel like the edge matches everything else, but there's this one spot right here where my path was a little bit off. It's this thing right here, that little bump right there. I'm just going to hit this with a brush. So the B key, make it really small.
How much did you feather it?
2 pixels.
Thank you.
Brush, make it about a 30% hardness, much smaller.
We're supposed to fill in with white or black?
Black, because you're hiding that area.
I don't know if I'm doing this right.
All right, hang on one second. I'm just fixing this one little area right there. That brush was too soft. Command Z to undo that. Harden this up a little bit more. And then clip it again. Yeah, that works.
If I hit Option Delete, it fills it in with more white.
Depends on what your foreground and background color. So your background color is black, so hold down the Option and hit delete at the same time. It's already done it.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
so
already
it
filled.
shouldn't be black. Okay.
Yeah, no, you're doing it on the mask. You're just trying to hide that edge.
Okay.
And at this point, save your work.
And then you went in and you painted with which color?
Oh, so for me, I was just fixing a small little bump that was on the side of her face. You probably don't have it. It came out of my pen work.
A couple bumps.
Then you can do. That means your probably your pen tool was too tight to this edge of her face. It would just do it again. You can still do it again. Okay. Double click on the hand to kick back out. So then the last thing that we really need to do on this is to remove the spill. So to remove the spill, we are going to be working on this pixel layer. It is a destructive move, but that's okay. We've still got the virgin down at the very bottom. So if anything goes wrong, we can always recover from this. I'm going to start at the very top of her head. And the thing to remember about this tool is that when you do spill removal, and I saw this was happening when some of you guys were moving, there's a lot of hair in here that is perfect. It does not need anything done to it. You want to avoid changing any of that. There's a lot of variety in here, and the way the spill tool works is the remove spill, not tool, the remove spill method that we use. It respects luminosity, so you'll keep the idea that this is hair, but what you'll lose is all of the corrections will be one color. So we need to have multiple colors of spill removal. So I'm going to hit the B key to get a brush. Make sure that in your drop-down menu it is a regular brush, a normal, not a normal blending mode, but a blending mode set to, and you'll notice I can't set mine to color right now. Does anybody know why? Because what? Yeah, because I'm on the mask. I need to be on the pixel layer. That's what I'm going to be working on. And now I can change my brush to a color blending mode. 100% opacity, 100% flow. Make sure it's a completely soft brush so that you don't see any edge work where we're actually going to be changing this. A little bit larger to kind of fit the area. So I'm going to go after this top part right here of her head first. So I'm going to sample a little bit of this darker color over here because the area is further back into her head. So it's a little bit, it has a little bit less of this brown color to it. So I'm going to hold down my Option key to click on that spot. Now, when you hold down your Option key and click, you can actually move your cursor around over different colors until you find the one that you really like. And I'm going to go with this one over here because I think it's still the right color. So I'm going to just let go, and that's now sampled that color. And then I can just go in here and get rid of that spill. I can also do the same one at the very top of her head up in there. And then I'm going to come over to this other area over here. And again, it's a little bit darker back in there, sort of like this color is right here. So I'm going to sample that. I'm going to make my brush a little bit larger. And I'm just going to, again, go after all of this. But again, do not paint over anything that does not need to be fixed. So, and then I just keep my hand on the Option key, and I change colors all the time. So if you do something and you make a mistake, so look at my screen really quickly up here. I'm going to come across here. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do a really dark color, and watch this. You can see that it's really obvious that this color now is completely desaturated because the color that I picked was almost black. If that happens to you and you realize that after the fact, now granted, I could just hit Command Z right now to undo it, but you can just paint over it with another color. So I'm going to sample the color over here, and I'm going to just paint over that same thing again to bring it back. So just realize if you've made a mistake, you're just changing the color. You just change it to another color that is correct. And then I'm just going to continue to work my way down here on the rest of this.
My paintbrush will not let me select the hair color when I click Option. Oh wait, it's because I'm not on the pixel layer.
See what?
I figured it out.
Oh, good. So again, just keep changing, varying color around all of this so that you don't get just this giant color block. When you get near her ear, stop. You've got to change your brush to a completely hard edge brush. Otherwise, you will overspray the hair color into her flesh color, and that would be wrong. Like I just painted right into her ears. While I'm saying that, I just went right over her ear with it. So even though I had a hard brush, so do not do that. And then go over and hit the other side. Now the other side looks much darker to me. So I still like to find something that's got color in it though, and that does.
Use a soft brush maybe.
Totally, oh yeah, thank you. I needed to go to a soft brush right now. You're absolutely right. Because otherwise it shows up. You'll get a hard edge on it. So again, I can now paint over that again. Oh, that was the wrong color. And be careful when you're sampling color that you don't pick up a color that's actually got spill in it, because then you'll be actually adding green into the hair, which you really don't want to do. But again, if you make that mistake, it's very simple just to paint over it again. And then I'm next to another ear, so I need to go back to a completely hard brush. All right, and then double click on the hand to kick back out. We've still got spill that's on the collar of her shirt. So I'm just gonna sample the color that's inside that, just that dark, you know, the dark inside. It's gonna make her collar gray, which is fine. All right, and then I want to show everybody a great trick about doing this kind of work right now. I want you to hold down your Shift key and click on the mask. It will actually turn it off, and then you need to go look. So for instance, look up at my screen right here. What I'm looking for are places that I have missed. And you can see I have missed this area right here on her head. Now the mask might be showing part of that or none of that, but I've also missed this hair strand that's coming right out here. So I'm gonna sample the color. Again, I'm still working on my pixel layer. I'm gonna just sample the color that's right out here. Make sure that this is a soft brush. And then just finish out all of this, making sure that you've gotten all the part, because people are missing spill. So then work your way around, like this hair right here needs to be filled in. So does this right here. So does that right there. So does this right in here. I'm going to resample another color down here that again is closer to what's going on down here. And just fill all of that in, because that's all possible spill that would be showing. There's another mistake right there. There's another mistake right in here. This hair down in here, you don't need to worry about because we've already masked it out. But I'm going to go to the other side. All of this is good, but I missed a piece that's right here. So again, it's just a good, easy way to check to make sure that you've gotten everything. There was missed a piece right up there too. And double click on the hand. Click on the, hold down the Shift key and click on this and save your work. And admire your work. Look at how good this knockout is. This is ridiculous.
My hair looks really weird in like two places on the right side. I don't know if it's from the brush or not.
So are you feeling like it's, what's weird about it? Do you feel like it looks too gray? Oh, well, but again, that's hair that's going out of focus and all fucked up. Yeah. Yeah, your selection looks great though. Okay. So you need to save your work. This is the beginning of your homework. So this is the file that we're going to actually, or at least if you've got your one from last week or a different one and you prefer to use that, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that everybody felt comfortable about, number one, how to make an action. Number two, how to use that zero selective color to do the knockout, how to control bigger areas of that using levels, and then to remove, to choke something, and then using history states to enable that choke, and then finally to remove spill. Are we all pretty good about this part? Questions about any of this?
If I want to fix the edges, I can just go back in and make a new pencil.
Just do a whole new pen tool on the mask, whatever, and just fill it with black. Yeah, you can do it over and over and over again. Okay. With that said, we're going to actually jump into doing frequency separation. So you can hit your F key once, which will take you to the black pasteboard, F key again, which will get you back to the version of it that's got the little traffic light at the top so that you can close your image up. And then we need to go find an image to open. So it's going to be from session 7, which is our session today. And in your session 7, there will be a folder called Split Frequency Retouching. If you can open that up. Inside of that, there is another folder called Frequency Separation Images. If you can open that up, and then finally inside that, there is a folder called Split Frequency Retouching Image. If you can open that up into Photoshop. And then we're going to zoom into this girl's face. Okay, and then I need you just to watch my screen. I'm not going to do this on the pasteboard because I want this to be part of the video, so pardon my drawing, but...
What was the other file we were supposed to open?
So the file is called Split Frequency Retouching Image. Did you find it?
And then we're just supposed to open a white.
No, don't open the white. This is just for me to actually talk to you about what's going on here. Okay, so what we're talking about when they talk about frequency is spatial frequency. So most of you guys are familiar with the term frequency, how often something happens, right? A high frequency means it happens more often, a low frequency less often. But you can apply frequencies to a number of things. So for instance, if you talk about sound, a really high frequency sound would be something that was really up in the scale, like really up there. Low frequency would be something that's really down, dead, bass notes really deep, okay? So in sound, if you were to graph it in sound, high frequency would look like this. And the higher the frequency, the tighter these lines would be. So it would be like this. Low frequencies look like this. So that's in sound, but you can do this for, again, what they call spatial frequency that actually describes two distinctly different parts of image detail. So, or forget detail, just image. So if you take a look at her skin, so zoom into this girl's skin. So I'm coming right underneath her eye, this area that's right in here. If you take a look at your info palette while you hover over this and then just really slowly move across this, what you'll see that happens is all of the numbers are changing, but not by much. So I'm going to look at just my red channel. And in my red channel, I've got a 248, a 249, a 251, a 250, a 247, a 2. They're all within 2 or 3 numbers of each other. That is a very low spatial frequency. And the reason it is that way is because there is no real tone or detail. I mean, there's no real detail or texture in this area. There's a little bit, but not very much. So again, this is an area that is primarily color and tone. If you do the same thing over her eyeballs, so come up here where her eyelashes are and start to go over this, you'll see that these numbers radically change. I go from like a 121 to a 78 to a 189 to a, I'm just changing all over to a 65 to a 58. It's massively changing very, very quickly. This is high spatial frequency, and the reason it is because this is where all the detail and the texture is. So the trick to doing split frequency work is that we want to separate high frequency from low frequency to allow us to retouch them independent of one another. So this is somewhat similar to how the healing brush tool works. Remember when we were looking at the healing brush tool, when we were doing that, it was a 2-step process. The first step was it was replacing texture. So it would take the texture from a source and remap that texture to the destination. But then it actually looked at the color and tone around that destination and tried to blend in the new texture, the stuff that we had replaced. That is not what this is. What this is that we are discretely separating color and tone so that we can retouch it by itself, and texture and detail so that we can retouch that by itself. And where this becomes really critical to us is if you take a look, the first thing that we're going to go after here, I just want to show you this example. If you take a look, come down to where her mouth is. If you take a look at the lighting that is on this image, this has got a side light that's coming in from the right side across, but take a look at her lip area right here. You can see that this has got a shift in tone. The area that starts up here is actually much lighter, and as we start to work our way down here, it starts to get darker. And that should be that way because her mouth actually protrudes from her face. So this shadow area in here would have to be, if this shadow didn't exist, her mouth would be flat with the rest of her face, and it's not. It's the same thing with her entire face. You can see highlight on one side, shadow on the other. The same thing is happening here. So when you go to try to retouch this using the conventional clone stamp tool or healing brush tool, if you do the clone stamp tool, it simply takes the pixels over here that are already lighter and it makes this area lighter, and so you ruin that. If you do it with the healing brush tool, same thing happens. Is that again, we're going to replace the texture here, but then it looks at the surrounding area and it tries to blend that in, and it will shift the tone in this. So we do not want to do that. What we want to do, if we want to get just rid of those hairs, is I want to leave the tone and the color alone. All I want to do is change the texture. Is this making sense to everyone? When you learn this technique, I'm telling you this right now. So I really hate using the retouching tools normally, just going in and using healing brush or clone stamp on this image. That to me is an abortion. I do not do that. Tonal retouching, you can see if it's something that's really valuable to you, you take your time and you do it right, and they look amazing, but it takes a lot of time. What frequency separation does is it allows you to play this place somewhere in the middle. Because the holy grail of this is that you keep texture. That's what it is. If we're talking now, this is specific to skin, but I would argue that that's specific to anything that you're retouching. So you're retouching stone, you're retouching brick, you're retouching food, you're retouching animals, you're retouching fur, you're retouching, I don't care, sidewalk concrete, you're retouching pin boards, whatever it is you're retouching, there are areas that have texture that you want to maintain, and there's areas that don't. And so for us, keeping that texture is paramount, and that is what this technique will allow you to do. This thing will fucking change your life. Your retouching is getting ready to take a huge bump right now. I told somebody last week, what if there was one class not to miss, this is the one, and it's because of this. So we're going to look at how you actually do this. It's a little bit confusing in the beginning, so I just want to make sure that everyone understands this. If you go back and look at the same folder where this just came out of, so look at the parent folder in here, there are some PDFs in here that are really important that you understand this, because we're going to go through it. The first one is this Ultimate Guide to Frequency Separation. If you open this up and take a look at it on page, it'll explain all the things that I just talked to you about, spatial frequency. It goes a little bit more into depth for that. But if you click on this fourth page right here, I'm just going to go ahead and open this up really quickly. You can open yours up as well. So just go again to the PDF that's in there, the Ultimate Guide to Frequency Separation. Double click on it to open it up. If you then, again, I would seriously read about this. It'll help you understand this stuff. Again, this is the frequency that we're talking about right here. But if you come down to here, it's this apply image setup. Until you get really familiar with how to do this, this is the recipes. You come into here to look these up because you're not going to remember this the first go around. However, the thing to point out is that there are two separate recipes. One is for an 8-bit image and one is for a 16-bit image. If you're working in 8-bit, which most of you are in this class, not all of you, but most of you are, then it's the recipe right here. You'll see as you zoom in on this that they're labeled that way. So again, this one right here is for 8-bit. This one right here is for 16-bit. And the way that they are built are completely different. And they're not interchangeable. So don't use the 8-bit recipe for 16 and don't use the 16-bit recipe for 8-bit. So just so that you understand, we are in 8-bit, so I'm going to walk you through the recipe. Also, two other things that are in here really quickly. There is a split frequency non-destructive setup. I wrote this because nobody ever talks about how to do this. You can watch 1,000 videos on doing split frequency work and nobody will refer to this. We work non-destructively in this class. There's also a high pass way that you can actually create the split. We will look at this. And then finally, we use the mixer brush a lot in split frequency work. This is how you want to set up your mixer brush to actually do that. How many people in this room have ever used a mixer brush? So again, this will actually get you through that part. Okay, so back into our image. So we are now going to split this. So what I'm going to do is I want to end up with a layer that's got all of the color and tone on it, And then I want a layer that's got all the texture and detail on it. So that's what we're going to go after. So to do this, you start off by making 2 copies of your background layer. Command J, Command J. Double click on the name of the one that's in the middle, and you're going to rename this low. And again, I'm going to add, so until you're comfortable working with this, I want you to use this full name. Once you get used to this, you're just going to call it low and high. But while we're doing this, just to help you remember what it is, do low and then add color and tone. Because that's the only thing that's going to be on this layer, is going to be color and tone. There is going to be no texture or detail on this layer. Then double click on the one, the top layer, and you're going to rename it high, and you're going to call it texture and detail. And again, my goal in this is to have no color or tone on this, but only texture and detail. That's going to be the mission in this. All right, so I'm going to turn off the eyeball for my high layer and select my low layer. And then when I do this, I actually try to find a place where I can see what I consider to be real detail in this. So when I'm looking at this, I can see that there are all these fine little hairs. Well, they're fine little hairs that are obviously on the top of her lip, but I'm also looking at her skin texture in here. I've got some detail in here. So these are areas that matter to me, because what I'm going to do is I've got to actually get rid of these to build my low color and tone layer. So to do that, select your low color and tone layer. Again, turn off the eyeball for the high one. Come up to the filter menu, down to blur, down to Gaussian blur. And I'm going to zero mine out, or I'm not going to zero it out. I'm just going to take it down to a 1. And this is where I'm going to start. Again, I like to do big jumps on mine. I don't try to do little in-between stuff. I don't drag sliders. So I've got one hand on my delete key, the other hand on my numbers keys. So with a number 1, I can still see all the detail that's in here. So I'm going to hit the delete key and go to a 2. I can still see texture and detail in this area. Delete key, 3. I can still see faint texture and detail in here. I've lost all the small hairs that are on the top of her lip, so I'm getting there. I'm going to hit delete key and go to 4. I no longer have any of that skin texture in this area. Now, you're looking at her eye and you're saying, well, I see skin texture there. That is not texture, folks. That is a shift in tone and color only. There's no little specks in her eye. There's none of that. All of that is gone. So with a blur of 4 right now, I have removed the detail in this image. Even if you go up and you look at her hair up at the top, people will say, well, that's all the texture and detail in the world. That is not. That is nothing but color and tone there. If you don't believe me, uncheck the preview. That's texture and detail. This is nothing but tone and color. So I'm going to go ahead and say okay to that. So now this layer no longer has any texture in it. What we're seeing now is strictly tone and color. So then I'm going to turn on the eyeball for my top layer, my high layer. I'm going to click on it to make it active. So this is the tricky part for you to understand. So what I've got now in this top layer is everything. It's color and tone, but it's also texture and detail. All of that is on this top layer because I haven't done anything to it yet. On the layer that's underneath it, I've got just tone and color. So if I take the tone and color layer underneath it and subtract it from this one that's got both, what I'm left with is detail and texture. So that's what I'm going to do. I am going to subtract this low layer from this top layer, and the only thing that will remain will be my texture and detail. Does that make sense? All right, so to do that, make sure that that layer is active and turned on and visible. Come up to your image menu, down to apply image. How many people have been in apply image ever? Yeah, nobody's ever been here, so anyway, usually. Once this thing opens up, at the very top, you have a drop-down menu. You can actually do apply image work between images. we're not doing anything like that right now. So there is no other drop-down image in here because I've only got one image open, and it's the one that you want. It's this image. You want to stay here in this image. In the layer that's underneath this, you want to click on this drop-down menu, and you want to come down and pick low, because again, we are going to subtract the low tone and color information from the entire image, and what we will end up with left is going to be, again, the texture and detail. So in the channel drop down here, yes, the last, when I was doing this 2 days ago, every time I changed this layer to low, this thing got changed down to one of these RGB, to one of the red, green, or blues. Just make sure that you're on the RGB channel. If it should never have changed. And then finally in the blending mode, click on the blending mode, you'll get a drop down menu, and you want to come down to subtract. When you get to subtract, you will get 2 more entry places. You will get a thing called scale. You want to type in 2 for your scale, and then your offset, you want to type in 128. And when you do that, you should get something that looks like a high pass image. There's a lot of gray in this, and then what you can see in here is the texture and detail of this image.
Are these numbers specific to this image only?
No, they are not. That's a great question. The offset and scale are every single time you do this apply image to do the split are exactly these numbers. This setup is exactly like this every time.
Skin tone.
Doesn't make any difference. No, again, I am separating color and tone from detail. So, and then say okay to that. Now, at this stage of the game, it just looks like a high-pass filter that we've run on this. However, if you click on the blending mode of this top layer now and come all the way down to linear light, your image will look normal. To make sure you did the split correctly, hold down your Shift key and select the low color layer. So I've got both the high and the low are selected right here. I'm going to then click on the menu to the right and get the flyout menu, and I'm going to come down to New Group from Layers. I just want to put both of them into a group, and I name the group FS for frequency separation and say OK. So now I've got both of them inside this group. Again, if you open up the group, you can see they're both inside there. But now you can use the eyeball of the group to turn both of them on and off at the same time. And I want you to turn them on and off. If you see any shift at all in your image, you did not do the split correctly. If they look exactly the same, you did the split correctly. Are we good on this part? Okay, now we need to build the safeties in here, and that again, that is the second PDF right here, the split frequency non-destructive setup. That's what we're going to do right now. So click on your low layer of your split inside of your split frequency group and just hit Command J. That'll make a copy of it. And now the only work that you do for the low frequency and color work is on this copy. If you do something wrong, if you screw up and you make a mistake, the one that's underneath it is the version that you can then take that information from and fix the mistake that you made up here in the top. Anthony. Sure. Well, then just go back in time before you did the split. So go back to layer visibility at the very top. All right, so turn off the top layer. No, turn off the top one. Turn on the bottom one. All right, so that looks right. Turn on the top one. And it's selected, so up to the layer menu, image menu, down to apply image. And then click on this layer drop down, the layer drop down and pick low. Good, and that stays right. And then on the blending mode, all the way down to subtract. And then this goes to 2, and then 128. No, you have 0, 128. Good, and then say OK. Good, and then you're going to change the blending mode of this layer, so click on normal, and it comes down to linear light. And then again, hold down your Shift key and click on the second layer and then to the flyout menu and do new group from layers, new group from layers in the middle, and call it FS. And then say okay, and then turn that eyeball on and off, and you see no change, so your split is correct. So then open the group up. No. Click on the little triangle. And then click on low copy, Command J, and you're where I am. That's
Mine's been completely
left, you need an offset of 128. Hit cancel out of all this. You can throw that thing away, because I don't know what that is. It's a black layer. So this is your blur, that part's fine. Command click on the bottom layer underneath it, because we need to make a new high layer. Command J, and drag it up on top of the blurred one. And double click on the name and rename it high. Texture detail. Good, and then you're gonna come up to the image menu, down to apply image. You're going to select, that's right, in the layer here, low is correct. Nothing, you're good. Come down to subtract, again, that part's right, but you need to change your offset to 128. And say okay. And then click on the blending mode. Sorry, so it says normal. Or does it come all the way down to linear light? Hold down your shift key and select the low layer. So they're both selected now. Go to the flyout menu on the side. Yep, and do new group from layers. It's in the middle. Right there. Yep. And call it FS. And say okay. And then turn that eyeball on and off and see if you see any shift in the image at all. You don't, so you're good. Go ahead and open the group. Click on the low copy and hit Command J. And you're where I am.
I also think I did something wrong, because it's not supposed to be.
Click on this guy right here, and you need to change the blending mode from normal down to linear light. Good, and now turn that on and off. Yeah, and there's no change.
Okay.
So then click on this copy right down here and Command J that guy. Oh wait, you've already done it. I'm sorry, you've already done it. So you're good, you're good, you're
Okay.
good, you're where I am right now. Okay, so that's how we made the actual copy to work on for our low frequency, the color and tone. But now we need to make one for the high, and this one gets a little trickier. So to do that, click on the high layer. You're going to Command J this, but when you do that, you'll see that she gets really crunchy really quickly. And the reason that's happening is that we are hitting this with a double layer of this blending mode set to linear light. We don't want to do that. So to fix this, you need to change the blending mode of this second layer from linear light back to normal, but then your image looks like the gray that it was. So what we need to do is we need to clip this layer to the one that's underneath it. To do that, hover over the area that's right where they touch, where high and high copy touch, hold down your Option key and click, and it will actually clip it and move this whole thing over. And your image will now, so the second layer looks, it's moved to the right, and there's a little arrow that's pointing down.
Should the original high texture and detail have the linear light though?
Yes.
Okay.
So what happens is the reason we do the clipping is that when you clip a layer, it inherits the property of the blending mode that's underneath it. So we set this top one to normal so that we don't double up on this, but it's okay because it inherits then the linear light blending mode of the one that's underneath it. So that's what's going on here. So now all of the work that we do are in these copies. So in the high copy, we work on that for the texture and detail. On the low layer, the low copy, we actually do that for our color and tone. So is everybody ready for this? Okay, so the last thing we need to do that's really critical in all of this is the tools that you use on this and what we set them to. So the thing for the texture at the very top, I say only, When I say only here, I mean 99.9% of the time. 99.9% of the time, you use the clone stamp tool, period, and you use a hard one. So to set up your clone stamp tool, hit the S key or just go over to your tool palette and select the clone stamp tool. If you then go up to the way that we can control the brush, you want to set this brush at like an 85% hardness, 85, somewhere in the high 80s, somewhere 85, 86, 80, somewhere in there. A really hard brush. The thing that we do not want to do is we do not want to mix texture. When you are using really soft brushes, as you start to use a really soft brush, a clone stamp tool or a healing brush tool, what happens is that the very center of the brush, you're getting 100% of the change, 100% of a replacement from source to destination. But as you start to move from the center of that brush out to the edges, as they get softer and softer and softer, what is happening is that it is allowing old texture to actually come through the new texture. You're actually mixing them to the point where you get to the very edge and it stops doing any change at all. But it's that transition area where you're mixing texture that you fuck up skin. And then people go too far trying to fix that part, and you end up with, plastic person in a plastic world because it all looks fake because you've removed all the texture. Does that make sense? All right, so this is the setup that and then again, blending mode, normal, 100% opacity, 100% flow, but make sure, and this is critical, make sure that you have got current layer only selected in this. You do not want current and below, and you certainly don't want all layers. It will screw all of your stuff up. All right, so that's how you set up the tool to work on your texture layer. For the color and tone, we use the healing group. Now, we can use a lot of things in the healing group. So if you go to the healing group, you can try spot healing. I don't suggest doing it. I like a little bit more control. The remove tool does work on some level, but we will take a look at that later on. But the healing brush tool is pretty much the go-to. The healing brush and the patch tool are the ones that most people do most of their work with. So if you select your healing brush tool, in the healing brush tool, it sets up differently. So for the healing brush tool, you want to set that at a 50% hardness. Again, it's going to stay as a normal blending mode. The source would be sampled. These are pretty much the default settings. Go ahead and leave it as aligned. And then again, you want to make sure that you click on the drop-down menu and set this to only current layer. Otherwise, you can run into mixing layers, and you'll know right away because all of a sudden this girl will turn like neon yellow wherever you're trying to do your work, and that's not what we are actually hoping to get. Okay. So with all of that said, we are going to start to do some work on this. I'm actually going to go after the little hairs on the side of her face, on the side of her lip, the left side of her mouth. That's what I'm going to go after first. So to do this, I'm going to tell you how I work, and then I'm going to show you how I'm just going to, the suggestion that I would make. So when I do this work, I actually isolate the layers so that I can see, it's easier for me to see. So what I mean by that is that if you hold down your Option key and click on the eyeball for that high copy, it turns off the low copy. We remove the color, and all I can see now is the texture and detail. And what's important about this is that you can see areas where you want to pick as your sample. So if we look at the area right here that's got all those fine little hairs here, if you look right next to it, we have got solid skin texture. But if you look at the other side of her face, there is no texture on this side. Why is that true? Why is that? It's because of the lighting. The lighting on that side is oriented to her face to completely fill it. So there are no real highlights or shadows there. There is really only just this flat color. So this tells me right off the bat, I do not want to use this as my source to fix this area that's over here because this needs to have texture in it. However, there's some weird things that are happening in her face. Look at my screen to see right here. You see this area that's right in here? There's a hard line that's in here, but there's also a place where there's no real texture in here at all compared to the rest of her face here. I want to get a big area of texture, of skin texture that I can work with. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add some texture in here just so that I can use that as my source to fill in the rest of this. But look what else happens. If you go over to the other side of her face, over into here, you also lose texture. Why? It's exactly the opposite problem. This has now gone into shadow, so there is no highlight shadow. There's no strong enough light in there or cross lighting in there to create texture. It's there, but it's been so flatly lit, you don't see it. So again, I know right now where I can actually do my source point, where I'm looking for texture to replace this stuff over her lip, is plain as day to me because I've got it here. When you have, if you turn on your low tone and color copy part right here, you might say, well, oh, come on, Versa, that's obvious. I can see it here, but I can really see it here. All right, so to fix this, again, I'm gonna hit the S key to go to the clone stamp tool. I'm going to do a little bit smaller brush here. I'm gonna sample an area of color, of tone, of texture up here that's sort of up here, kind of like closer to her nose. Hold down my Option key and sample. And the first thing I'm gonna do is to fill in this area right down in here that doesn't have any real texture in the skin. So I'm just going to click and drop it down here. I'm gonna hit Command Z to undo that because I accidentally hit the Option key a second time. So, and you'll see you are bringing texture into that area. Now I've got a whole range of texture that I can use for her upper lip. So I'm gonna start this area right underneath her nose, hold down my Option key and click to set my source point, and then I'm simply gonna come over here and I'm going to paint out all the little hairs. And again, I can stay in here. So once you get down one stroke, change your source point. Otherwise, you're going to create a repeating pattern. So you want to mix these source points up. So I'm going to click on another spot here to get another source point, and I'm going to actually go through that. And you can see you are replacing that hair with texture. And then I'm going to do one final one here.
You said to take it from around the nose, right?
Yeah, I'm working the whole way down as well. So there's areas over in here that you can also steal from. You just want to mix it up so you don't get a repeating pattern. If you then click on the low tone layer down at the bottom, you can actually see that you have replaced the hair, but look at the shadow on the skin. You've even kept the mole that's on the very top of her lip. That's all still in there, as well as it going into shadow. All we did was replace the texture. To see what's happening, turn on, you need to go down and turn on your bottom layer, your bottommost layer, because we're gonna do a before and after. So go all the way down to turn on the background layer at the very bottom, and then use the eyeball on the total frequency separation group to turn it on and off. And you can see we have just replaced the texture. We did not touch the tone, we did not touch the color. And right now, if you've been serious about your retouching at all in your life, your little heart should be going 1,000,000 miles an hour and your brain should be just jumping up and down for joy. It gets better. Yes?
With the little line on the side of her lip, like right by where the hair
This right here?
No, down a little bit to the left. There.
This?
Is it bad to edit that out?
No, there's no, oh girl, there is no bad in my book. Well, that's not true. So Callie asked me if today was the day we were going to talk about ethics. That's not today. It's either next week or the week after, and we will get in and have that whole conversation. This is what I would say to you right now is that, again, we are doing non-destructive work here. So you can take it out in the retouching and you can decide tomorrow whether you want to keep it that way or not. And you can decide a year from now if you want to keep it or not. It's not a permanent thing.
If we decide we don't like texture, can we just go into the layer and do the 50% gray like we did with the
No, I will show you what we do. So hold that thought. Let's get through this part and then you'll see. All right. So I actually want to move over now. There is a mole or something that's on the other side of her face, more in the light side of her face. So if we come over and take a look at this part that's over here, do you guys, everybody see the part that I'm talking about right here? Again, I'm going to hold down my Option key and just click on the eyeball for this high texture layer. It turns everybody else off. It doesn't turn off the layer it's clipped to. They're clipped together. So the blending mode is, it's going to stay on. But you can actually see that little spot right here. But again, this was the thing that I was telling you about. If you zoom into this area, if you look right underneath this area, so between the area that I want to fix and her lip, it's completely smooth. this area that I'm trying to fix is not completely smooth. It's got texture in there. So this shows me where I want to grab the texture from. Now, if I go above her, the area, there is texture up here, but that texture is actually, her face is receding at this point. So the texture that's up here is a slightly different focus than the texture that I'm trying to fix. But the texture that is either towards her nose or down below that is in the same focus. It has texture, and so that's where I'm going to sample my point using my clone stamp tool. So I'm going to hover on the air. I'm going to do it on the part that's lower below it. Hold down my Option key, click, and then just paint over that point and let go. Now, in this case, it looks like it fixed it, but if you hold down your Option key and click on the eyeball to turn everybody else on, you'll see this is not completely fixed. There is still a dark patch there. And the reason that is because that is not texture or detail. This is now tone and color. I've now got to go down to my tone and color area and fix it with the stuff that's down there. So I'm going to go down to my tone and color. I can do the same trick. I can hold down my Option key and click on tone and color. It turns everyone else off, and you can spot that. You can see that big blotch that's right there. So to fix this, you do not use the clone stamp tool. You use the healing brush tools. So again, the keyboard shortcut for that is J. If you click on it, though, you need to go to your drop-down menu to actually select the healing brush, not the spot, although the spot would work in this one. But again, the healing brush tool, you're in control. Hover over the area. I'm going to go for the very same area that I was, where I grabbed the new texture. Hold down my Option key, set that as a source point. And it says I'm on the wrong, I turned off everybody, but I'm still on my high frequency layer. Make sure that you select the low color and tone copy frequency separation layer. And then again, hold down the Option key, click to set your source point, and remove that part. And then hold down your Option key, click on the eyeball to turn everybody else on, and then turn your frequency group layer on and off. You cannot do that kind of quality retouching that we just did on this using the clone stamp tool or the healing brush tool alone on an image. You can only do it by splitting these apart. Crazy. Questions? Yes? So if something screws up, you can recover. So let me ask you this. Just think about this. If you closed this image up right now and decided, I can't work on it right now, I'll get back to this in a week, right? And you came back to it in a week and you realize you fucked one of these up. So you're working on your low layer and you screw something up. You could make a copy of the background layer again, right? But would you remember how much you blurred the image? No. So by having a copy of this, I can get back to it. So let's see how that part actually works. Yes?
I feel like I can still see my, like, the mole. What I, did with the brush, like, it's better, but you can still see.
Eli, if you're doing really good drugs, you need to share with the whole group here. I'm just saying. That was a joke. That was a joke. That was a joke. Well, you are still seeing it. Big as life. So what did you use to fix this? All right, so you're on this layer. So come off the side of just a little bit, sample it, and then paint the hell over it.
Yeah, but yours is, like, totally gone.
But you haven't fixed the texture. You need to go back up to your texture, clone stamp tool. Oh, your texture is turned off. That's why.
Oh.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay.
Okay. I think now would be another good time for a break, guys. I've got 3:40. Let's make it our 3:41. Make it a hard 10. Be back at 3:51, and we're going to look at other examples of this. So I'll see you in 10 minutes.
Okay, so low frequencies, the one you're looking about.
So if you double click on the hand, kick back out, and then slowly work your way back in, you can just sort of see kind of, what we've done in this area right here. Again, make sure that your bottom background layer is completely turned on, and then turn on your frequency separation. And you can see very subtle stuff, but we have kept all the texture in her skin, which is paramount here, but we've slowly started to get rid of some of the problems in here. However, again, we talked about being able to recover stuff that you have done in case you need to. So let's say that you've got an art director who comes to you and says, well, I really liked those fine little hairs on the top of her lip. I want you to bring those back. And you say to yourself, oh, okay, sure, I can do that. So to do that, go into your frequency separation group. You're going to select then the original version, the one that's on the bottom, not the copy. The copy is where we did all of the work. We are not going to do that. We're going to select the virgin one that's underneath it. You're going to hit the lasso tool, the L key, and you're going to select a big area. I've got part of her lip. Everybody just do this with me, please. Select a big area that you know contains all of that. You're going to jump this to its own layer, Command J. Then you're going to take this and you're going to pull it up on top of the copy layer that we had. When you do that, it will actually unclip it. That's okay. I'm fine with that part right now. However, it's set to linear light right now because that's what that was. You need to change this to normal because we're going to paste it in to a layer that's actually got its blending mode set to normal. So then again, with this top layer selected, hit Command E. That's how you can merge down. And then we just are going to reclip this. So hover in between the two, between the high copy and the high, and hold down your Command key, the Option key, and click, and it will reclip it, and you've got the little hairs back.
After we did the duplicate layer, are we selecting layer 1 in the high texture and detail copy, and then hitting Command E?
Okay, so we're trying to fix this problem, right? Okay, so you are going to, right now, I don't know what that is. So let's just get rid of that layer. Actually, go back in history before we did any of this. Okay, so yeah, that part is actually working right now. So this is on here. So then you're going to Command J that. And then you're going to drag that on top of no, you're pulling it out of the group. You just need to set it on top of that, okay? And then Command E will merge it down. Oh wait, sorry, hit Command Z to undo that. This is now copied with a blending mode of linear light. You got to change it to normal, then Command E, and then reclip it. You were almost there, yeah. And then zoom in, and you should have it back. Yep. So there's another way of doing that. If you, say what? Yeah, you don't want to blend a linear light layer into a normal layer. It will carry the blending mode with it. So there's another way of doing this. You can go back, if you look at your history, go back. You should see a lasso in here. This is where we started to fix the problem. Go back to the history state just before lasso, and you can see it's gone again. You can use masks on your retouching layers. So if you click this high copy and simply add just a regular mask to it, a regular layer mask, and then hit the D key to default your foreground and background colors to black and white. Black is my background color, so I'm going to hit the X key to make it my foreground color. And then you can just simply, on your layer mask, paint over all of this. So let me see, hang on one second. Yeah, just paint over all of this stuff and it'll pull it right back in. And so you're good to go. In my case, I don't want to get rid of that. I'm gonna actually throw away my layer mask. It's just as easy as making it white again. I am not going to apply it, I'm merely gonna delete it. So this part's actually fixed. However, I do have it's sort of I don't want to call it a stain. It looks like, again, it's like a mole or something that this girl, or a freckle maybe that this girl had. So if I want to get rid of that, again, if you hold down your Option key and click on the high frequency of the texture, you do not see it because that is not high frequency. That is actually tone and color. So hold down your Option key and click on the eyeball for tone and color, and you can see it big as life right there. So I'm going to select tone and color to actually fix this part. So before we get into mixer brush, we're just going to use a regular brush to actually fix this part. So hit the B key to get a brush, and in your brush you're going to actually set your brush up to a medium hardness on this, because again, you want some serious control here, only because I'm really close to her lip. Otherwise, I would keep this brush even softer. I'm going to break my brush a little bit smaller so that I can get close to this size. But then you're going to take your flow of your normal blending mode is fine. Take your flow way down. Bring it down to like a 1 or a 2, somewhere in there. So again, extremely low flow because we want to build this up slowly. And then I'm going to sample a color of her skin that is lighter than this spot that's on her lip. So I'm going to hold down my Option key and click to sample the skin, and then I'm just going to start scrubbing back and forth onto that spot until it's gone. And I'm going to continue to work my way down because there's more down here. And my brush is just taking off on me. It's happening way, 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 way too fast. So I'm going to go all the way down to a 1% on my brush. I'm also going to soften it up a little bit more to, right now it's a 50%. I'm going to take it down to like a 25%. And then I'm going to do the same thing again. In this case, I know I've fixed it right here. I'm going to take a look at it with the high layer on, and I can see that it's actually gone. But if I hit Command Z to bring it back, you can watch it happen in real time. So go ahead and turn on your high layer. Make sure you're working on your low layer. Again, it's a brush that's got that skin color in it, and you can just paint that whole part right out. So if we go off and look at her area that's underneath her eyes, we can do the very same thing here. Again, this is a double whammy that's up here. It's texture, but it's also tone that's up here at the top. So I'm going to sample, and if you do this brush work, you want to do a lot of it quickly, and you want to sample a lot. So again, I'm going to hold down my Option key to just sample color somewhere else, and then just start to scrub underneath her eye here. And again, continue to scrub, and you'll actually be lightening it up, but you've kept all the texture in there. Insane. If you then want to go after some of the texture, again, I typically do this just looking at my texture layer alone, but you do not have to. You can just select your high copy and still so that you can see everything. Again, Clone Stamp tool is the tool that you want to use, and then you need to find a place to pick texture. Now, I don't like the coloring that's on the texture that's right underneath her eye, but that texture belongs there. So again, it's the coloring is off, but the texture is right. If you actually look at the rest of her skin down here, it's just way too soft to explain what's going on up in here. So I'm going to hold down my Option key and sample this up here, and I can use that to actually get rid of a lot of the lines that are happening underneath. Now I'm going to leave one of the lines that's sitting right up here. Now the other thing that I've got is I feel like that line that's happening right here that I just did is a little bit too strong. So look at my screen. It just looks, the line is too strong. So I am going to add a layer mask to this, to my high texture layer. I'm going to hit the B key to get a regular brush. Black is my foreground color. I'm going to make it a completely soft brush. Again, a 1% flow so that I can scrub this in really slowly. And I'm just going to start to work on this line to break it up so that it does not look so hard on here. And I'm just going to run it back and forth until it blends in a little bit more with the line that's actually underneath her eye. I'm going to zip back out and turn my frequency separation. Whoops. If you turn it off and nothing shows, it's because your very bottom background layer is turned off. And then turn the FS group on and off. Change your life retouching. So then finally, I don't like the pebbly part that is right underneath her skin. So if you zoom in and take a look at this, I want to replace it. There's texture down here. There's stuff under here that I don't like. The stuff that's on the side of her nose, there is no texture at all. But there is stuff that's down here on the lower part of her cheek that actually works. Again, I find it easier to do this looking just at the texture layer. So I'm going to hold down the Option key and click on it because it gives me some idea where to sample from. So I'm going to sample from the area right down in here. S key to get the clone stamp tool. Option key to click to set this as my source point. And then I'm just going to use this to actually change that. And that did not, oh, that was on my layer. That's on the layer mask of this, not on the layer itself. Let's try that again. Option key, click, and then just replace the texture in here. Again, resample a different area to get different textures so you don't get a repeating pattern. So I'm just resampling a lot. And then again, turn on your low copy layer here. And then again, I think the color in here is off. So again, I can actually go back to a regular brush, the B key, go down to my low layer to actually do this work, make it a little bit larger, make sure that it's a soft brush, a really low flow, like 1%. I'm gonna hold down my Option key and click to sample color, and then just try to work my way through in here to get some of that red out. Resample the color a lot. If it doesn't go fast enough for you, you can bump your flow up to like 3 or 4% maybe, and then try again. And this is now my before and after. Considerably easier than tonal retouching. But again, look at this. Look at the quality of this. That's still real. That's not plastic skin. That's not like some fake shit that, I don't know, somebody made up. Right? Look at this. Sorry. Is this making sense to everybody what's going on? Yes.
My under eye has like purple and steel. How did you get rid of the red again?
Again, it's tone and color. So go down to and look, hold down your Option key and click on your tone and color, the copy, the layer that you can work on, and you can see where it's all red. That's why I do this turned off. Look at this, I can still see there's red right in here. So again, back to my B key to get a brush, make sure that you're on your tone layer, hold down the Option key and click this, and then just work your way in here. And again, because I'm at such a low flow here, I'm scrubbing back and forth. I don't even have to take it off. But look at this, the area of the side of her nose, that's got too much red in it, as does this whole area right in here. This is actually too strong. So this red that's in her nose, I just got rid of that. If we go over to this other side over here, look at that shadow, that red shadow that's happening right in the middle of that. I don't want that to be like that, so I'm going to sample the area that's just to the outside of it, and I'm just going to work to get that through. Now, for me, I think that that's too strong. Again, my flow is too high to do that, so I'm going to take just Command Z to undo that, take my flow all the way down, because it just gives you more time to scrub this in, and the more variation that you can get in here, the better. So I'm just going to run my way across that, hold down my Option key, sample another color, work it in here a little bit more, another color. So that's how I would go about doing this part. However, there's another trick that I need to show you guys right now. It's these areas of transition in her face. Like you can see, this is really blotchy in here. We talked about this in doing your the tonal work, the large tonal layer. This is areas in here that we actually wanted to fix. So we're going to go after a completely different tool in this one. And again, the way you set up this tool is incredibly important. So there is a PDF on our in our Canvas site. If you take a look at this PDF, it's this mixer brush settings for retouching. If you click to open this up, it will walk you through everything that you're supposed to be setting in here. So I'm going to go through each one of these things so that you guys see actually how to set this thing up. So hang on one second. Okay, so to do this, your mixer brush is actually in the brush group. So if you hit your B key, it will select your brush group. It's highlighted over here in the tools. But if you click on your drop down, again, the lower right hand corner, you can come down and you can select mixer brush. And what mixer brush does is that Photoshop introduced a whole series of tools that were supposed to emulate painting. And so that's what this tool actually does. It allows you to actually mix inks, to blend inks, to do all of those kinds of things. However, depending on how you set your brush up, the problem that most people run into with doing retouching like this using the mixer brush is that what you want to do is when you actually use the mixer brush, when you put your cursor down onto an image, it takes the color that you land on and it loads your brush with that color. And then it allows you to paint with that color someplace else. But the problem that we run into is that that color sticks in your brush. It's really meant to emulate, if you think, like a real oil paint brush. So if you dip your oil paint brush in a bright green and then you paint somewhere on your image and it paints the bright green, that's fine. But then you dip your brush into like a purple, well, there's a lot of that bright green that's still in your brush. And when you dip it in the purple, all of a sudden now you don't have just purple, you've got green and purple mixed together. So the settings that we are going to use here, the way we set it up is that every single time you finish a stroke and you lift your cursor, the brush cleans itself. And so every single time you start with a fresh, clean brush. And so when you're doing the mixing here, it ends up there's no carryover. So anyway, this is how we set it up. So if you look at the mixer brush, so you need to have it set first. So again, drop down menu, come down to mixer brush. It's a regular brush. If you click on the drop down menu, you can set the hardness to 0. That's how I'm going to set mine. But then if you look here along the top, you will see there's a folder. This is actually for preset brushes. We're not going to work with that. But right next to that, you'll see this is actually, it's a box that well, if it has color in it, it's showing you the color of this brush is loaded. You want that to be transparent. To get that to be transparent, there are 2 icons that sit right next to this. They look like little brushes. What you want to do is, and the way it's supposed to be, there's supposed to be buttons. So if you've got a darkness around your button like this, you'll see when I just clicked on the first one as I'm moving to the right, I actually now have a color swatch that's in here. And that's because it's keeping the ink that I've loaded previously. You want to uncheck that. So if you click on it, it'll no longer have that black surround. It'll no longer look like a button that's been pressed in. But most importantly is the color swatch in there should look like a checkerboard. And that's telling you that it is transparent. Remember, checkerboard in Photoshop is transparency. So that is no color in your brush. The next one over, you want to push it in. You want to make sure that it is selected, that it is pushed in. Then you don't need to worry about this word custom. The fact that you've changed anything will set it to custom. Then the wetness of your brush, you want to set to 20. So again, if you think about wetness, the difference in wetness is sort of like oil paint is not extremely wet, whereas watercolors would be wetter. So it's just, again, how much bleed you're getting out of your brush. So 20% is what we want to set. The load for this, you want to put that at 100. And what that's saying is that when you hit a color, it's going to completely load your brush 100%. Then the next one is mix. You want to leave that at 100%. What that's doing is that how aggressive is the mixing of color you're taking from one place and dragging to another. And then finally flow. And the way we work with flow here, that's how aggressive your brush actually acts. So I typically do flow between, this is where I really I change this to control how aggressive the brush is. Between 20 and 40% is usually a good spot. If you run into really, really difficult places and you need to hit it with more ink, you can go ahead and bump this up to 60, 80. But typically 20, 40 is the kind of place that you want to be. So this is how you set your brush up. So again, When you do this, the first of the icons next to the the color sampler patch is not pressed in. The one next to it is pressed in. You have a wetness of 20%, a load of 100%, a mix of 100%, and a flow of 40. And then this is how you actually use the tool. Watch my screen. I'm going to show you really fast. So I'm going to make my brush bigger. So there was an area right in here that I was talking about, like this area right in here. You can see there are these little discolorations that are actually happening in here. So what you do with your brush is I'm going to hit it down onto a place that I want to take ink from, and I'm going to drag it across the area that I want to fix. So this is how it happens, fast and a lot. So you just do this. And then I've got a hard edge that's right here, so I'm just going to pop that out like that. Now you might say that, well, that didn't do anything, right? So I'm going to go back to my mixer brush from the very beginning. I'm going to show it to you in real time when you're able to actually see everything. So I'm going to turn this guy on right here. I'm going to zip back out. So it's this discoloration right here. Again, I'm working on my low color, and I'm just going to run that through. And it's gone. And this is the difference. Sorry.
Just wanted to like clarify for this process, we don't need to do dots at all.
You don't need to do what?
Dots.
You don't need to do what?
Dots.
DOS?
Dots. Like DOTS.
Oh, dots. No, 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 no. You are now painting. Sorry. But look at how this amazing this works. So for instance, I think that this shadow area in here is a little too dark, right? So I can just pull down a highlight from the top here to soften that up. I also think that her nose is a little too red right here, so I can pull this down into here. I think that it's too dark in here, so I can pull color up. Again, if I think that this is too red in here, or I don't like the color in here, I can start to pull color in from another place. But look at the difference in this. If you were trying to paint this with a paintbrush and lay paint on here, I guess you could try to use a layer that was set to a color blend mode. But again, I'm not touching the texture here at all. What you will find is that there's areas like this, that this cheekbone area right in here, I think it's a little, you're trying to soften up these lines. This is a really hard line that's right here. You want to soften that up slightly. So I'm going to go to a much larger brush and then don't have to hit it so many times. So again, I'm just going to kind of loosen this up like this. And that's all it takes. But look at the difference this makes. So the large tonal work that you guys were doing, this is the tool that you actually use to do that kind of stuff. So for instance, let's go after the big spot that's right underneath her lip. So I'm going to zoom into this. I am going to go to my, hold down my Option key. I'm going to go to the copy only layer here. I'm going to go after the texture first. This is what I was saying. Where would you pick the texture for this? If you go to the side that's on the right, there is no texture in that. That's in highlights, so that would not be believable. But there is texture on the left side, and so this is where I'm going to steal. I'm going to steal from over here and bring it over to here. S key to get the clone stamp tool. Make sure that you've selected your high copy layer. Hover over this and click to sample tone. Texture again, and don't do the whole thing once because you'll get a repeating pattern. Resample from another spot, and then resample from another spot. I've also got, it looks like a scar underneath her lip here really quickly. I'm going to actually get rid of that. Again, working from the texture that's on one side because there is none on the other side. So I'm going to start all the way over here, sample and do just a little bit of that, and then resample for another spot. Again, you don't want to just have one big stroke or you will end up getting a repeating pattern. I'm going to turn this on now to actually see how that got. And again, this is if I turn on my bottom layer, and then do this back and forth like that. So that's cleaned it out pretty well in terms of the texture point of view. But then if I go down and look just at my tone and color, holding down my Option key, I'm going to click on tone and color. You can see how modeled all of that is, this whole area in here. So again, I'm going to go to the B key to get my mixer brush. I'm going to select my low tone and color. I'm going to drop my flow down on this though, because this can get pretty aggressive really quickly. So I'm going to come down to like a 20%, make my brush a little bit smaller, and then I'm just going to start knocking my way over here to smooth this out and to pop up into here. just to smooth all of this out. And again, I'm quick and fast with this. There's a whole modeling right here that we can actually take care of. I'm going to start at the top and work my way down to smooth all of that out. And come in here to pull a little highlight. So remember, think about where you're picking color from and ultimately where it's going. So in my case, no, go ahead.
So it's about like the direction of the brush.
It is. So again, what you're thinking of is where do you want to drag color from into? So you can do it from both sides, from the top, or you can do all of those. But that's what's happening to me right here. So if I take a look now at what this looks like in totality, I've smoothed out the color somewhat, but when I'm looking at just my low layer right here, my mixer brush, it's done a pretty good job of smoothing these edges out, but you see this area that's right in here? It's darker than the area that's right above it and then the ones that's below it. I can't really grab color from the mixer brush here. So I do this all the time. I use the mixer brush and then the regular brush. I use them together back and forth and back and forth. So do you guys see that? Yeah, you can see this whole area in here that's a little bit darker than the area that's around the rest of this. So I'm going to change this back to a regular brush. Again, just check to make sure that it's completely soft. Mine is. I've still got a low flow. I've got a flow of like 1%. I'm going to sample some light skin tone out here, and then I'm just going to run back and forth across this to actually lighten that whole thing up. And then this is my result. Sorry. So look at this difference. Sorry. Jeez, how hard can this be? But look at this, guys. Again, this is what I keep saying to you over and over. And when I turn this off, I've still got all texture in here, and you believe it. I didn't just whack the shit out of that with a healing brush tool, and all of a sudden that's plastic skin just like all the other shit that you see. So this is even things, you need to think about this as well. If all of a sudden your lighting has actually robbed something of texture and you want to reintroduce it, you can steal texture from someplace and put it into another place. So for instance, if you take a look at her face up here, there is no texture in this part of her face here. Now, I don't necessarily feel like it has to have any, but if you wanted to put that in, you would just steal it from up here and you could bring it down here into this area, and there you go, you're off to the races. Questions about this? All right, get ready to really have your life changed. You can close that up, you don't need to save it, it's not part of your homework. There's another file that I want to open really quickly. So go back to our session number 7 in the split frequency group into the split frequency images. And inside of there is a thing called wrinkled green skirt. If you can open that up into Photoshop. Okay, so this is classic in all fashion. Again, this is not a fashion class, but this is symptomatic of problems that you run into all the time. How would you get rid of the wrinkles?
The color and tone.
Color and tone?
Yeah.
In split frequency, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Or yeah, that's exactly how you would do it, right? You could try to actually, there's enough, the wrinkles are not so deep. You could actually go after this using tonal retouching. So let's see what that looks like first. So again, just please do this with me. This is all practice. And again, these are the tools that you just go back and forth and what would be the best and how would this work and blah, 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 blah. So I'm going to hold down my Option key and I'm going to click on add a layer. So again, hold down your Option key, click, because it'll open up a dialog box to set up your tonal retouching and name it Tonal Retouch. And we can call it large. And click on the blending mode and change it to soft light. Click on the fill with neutral color and say okay. So it's just a fast way to make one of those. And then I'm going to zoom into this area. I'm going to start on this side over here where I've got the bigger the wrinkles that are happening. I need to make dodging and burning colors based on this green. So I'm going to click on my foreground color picker, and I'm going to click again, not in the shadow area. I want to pick just a sort of a general middle green out to the side because that sets my color. So I just clicked on that. I've got a hue of 78, but then I'm going to click on my brightness and bump my brightness up into the low 90s. And then I'm going to click on my saturation and I'm going to drop it down into the mid-teens. And that is now going to be my dodging color, and I'm going to say OK. Then for my burning color, I'm going to click on my background color picker to open it up. I'm going to again hit the color sampler part right in the middle, normal green. That sets my hue. And then again, I'm going to click on my brightness and I'm going to pull it down. So again, I typically go down to high teens, low 20s. You want to make sure that you still got some color in there. I'm going to click on saturation and boost it because I do want to keep color in there, and say OK to that. And those are my dodging and burning colors. I'm going to hit the B key to get a brush. Now in this case, my flow is all the way down, so I'm going to crank it all the way up. I'm going to drop my opacity down. And again, we use 6% for skin tones, or that's what you guys, that was sort of the starting point. I think 6% is going to be too aggressive for this, but we'll try it. Make sure that it is a completely soft brush. Mine is a normal blending mode. And then I'm going to make this larger, and still working on my tablet. On my soft light, on my tonal retouching layer, I'm just going to start tapping. Make my brush smaller because there's a much narrower region here. Hit the X key to bring down the highlight. X key to go after the lighter part a little bit more. I think 6% might be a little low, so bump it up to, try to get up to around an 8, 10. See if that gets it a little faster. So I've got a pretty even part that's happening in here now, but overall it's darker, so I'm going to make my brush much larger and then go after the bigger areas of it all. And you can see it's doing its trick. I mean, it's definitely lifting it, right? But how long do you want to do that? This goes right back to how you just spent your last week, right? So I'm going to temporarily turn this off. Or here, better yet, let's leave it on and just do a history snapshot of it, because we can go back and then compare it later. So I'm going to click on the little camera, and we're going to call this tonal. And then just say OK. And then you can throw the layer away. It'll remember it, and it'll bring it back, as long as we don't close the file first. So then I'm going to go after it the way I think you should go after it, and that's going to be doing frequency separation. And I'm going to show you the other way of doing frequency separation, the other way to actually set this part up. So we'll do both methods here. I'm going to start with the method that, the other method to show you. So again, this is using high pass filter. So if you take a look back in our Session 7 folder, there's a PDF that describes the process right here. So this is how you do the high pass separation version of it. And I'll show you why you want to know this part. Not that you, again, what the result ends up being exactly the same. However, in doing this, we approach it instead of trying to get rid of the details, because that's a subjective thing. We can actually start the opposite way. We can actually start with nothing and bring the details in and decide how much detail we actually want. So a lot of times if I'm struggling with trying to figure out what blurring level I need to actually get rid of the details, I'll do this as well, because between the two of them, it gives me a better idea of what values that I actually pick to do either the blurring or the high pass filter part of it all. So anyway, just realize that this is the recipe for how to do it right here. The recipe, there's some quirks in it that you need to just make sure that you follow it until you commit it to memory, and then you'll be good to go. So back in this image, we start the same way as we did before. We're going to do 2 layers. So Command J, double click on the one in the middle, and we're going to call it low color and tone. Click on the high layer, double click on the name, and we're going to call it high, and texture and detail. But instead of now turning that off and blurring our image, we're actually going to get rid of all of the detail and then start to bring it back. Now I'm going to zoom into this area that's right near her belt buckle. What I want to be able to do is I want to see part of the stitching is texture and detail, but part of the stitching is also tone and color. So, but what is definitely not tone and color is going to be the texture of the fabric. The texture of the fabric is nothing but detail and texture. So anyway, that's how I'm going to start. So the way you start with this is that, again, make sure that you've got the top layer is selected, everybody's on. You need to come up to the filter menu, down to other, down to high pass. And when you do that, it'll open up. I'm going to take my slider and zero it completely out. If you zero it out, it doesn't go to actually 0, but it goes to a 0.1, so a tenth of a pixel. But you see nothing but a gray screen on this. So again, I do the same trick. I'm going to do this in whole numbers because I just get there quicker. So my radius is selected. I'm going to type in a 1. And you can see it's starting to bring back a little bit of texture, but I don't think it's there yet. So I'm going to hit the delete key and hit a 2, and that brings back more. It's more aggressive. I still don't think I'm quite there yet. Hit it again and bring back a 3, and this is now starting. I'm starting to get a real sense for the texture that's in the fabric. I'm going to see what 4 looks like. In the 4, it's actually bringing back even more, but look what else is happening. You see this little shadow that's right in here, this wrinkle. Again, look up at my screen to see where I'm talking about. That is starting to bring in tone now, tone and color. If you actually take this to an extreme, so grab your radius and really crank it up. Go all the way up to like a 40. You'll see at a 40, you're starting to bring in tone and color now. I'm starting to bring the green in here. So again, the trick to doing this is that you're trying to keep all of tone and color on one layer and only detail and texture on the other layer. So it's this balancing act. So I'm going to go back to a 4, which is where I was, and then I'm going to zip back out and make sure I'm not getting any color in here in the rest of this. Again, I'm worried about this little wrinkle right here. I don't have any of the wrinkles, you know, the big wrinkles that were in this part that we were doing the tonal work. I don't have that, but I do feel like I'm beginning to bring back the wrinkles that are right here in the zipper cover. So I'm going to go back to a 3 and see what I think about that. And it just lessens it enough. And I still think I'm holding on to the texture of the fabric. Let me zoom in just a little bit more and see again what that 4 is. The 4, I think I'm bringing in too much. So I'm going to now try a 3.5. And the 3.5 seems like a good compromise to me. So that's what I'm going to do. The trick to doing this technique, though, is you need to remember this exact number. So if it's 3.5, you need 3.5. You need to remember 3.5. If it's 3.6, you need to remember 3.6. Because if you don't remember that number and enter it into another dialog box in a minute, if they're not identical, your split won't work. So again, everybody just remember 3.5. I always keep a piece of paper next to me and I just write this shit down. So anyway, but I'm going to remember it. So I'm going to go ahead and say okay to that. You have to do these next moves in order. You can't do something else in between. So your next move to doing this is that you need to come over to your image menu, down to adjustments, to brightness and contrast. And when the brightness contrast dialog box opens, you need to click on legacy first, and then your contrast, you need to dial in -50. And then say okay. Now the reason I say that you need to do this legacy first is, I'm going to cancel out of here and show it to you again. If you come up to the image menu down to adjustments across to brightness and contrast, and you put in your -50 first, and then click on legacy, it zeroes your contrast out. And if you don't catch that, you end up doing nothing here, which will then lead you to your split will be completely off. So I'm going to type in -50 again and say OK to that. And then this gets the same treatment that the last one did. But before we actually, so I'm going to change this to linear light. And then go down to your low, and in your low, you're going to come up to the, you don't even have to look at it. You're just going to come up to the filter menu, come down to blur, down to Gaussian blur, and you've got to enter that same exact pixel value here that you did in high pass, 3.5, and say OK to that. Hold down your shift key and select both of those layers. Go to your flyout menu, click on that and say new group from layers. Name that FS for frequency separation. And then again, turn the eyeball on and off. And if you see any shift, you fuck something up and you have to do it again. Don't go in and try and fix shit. Just throw it all away and start over again. I am going to open this up and make protective layers for myself. So I'm going to click on my low color and tone and hit Command J. That makes my safety copy for that. I'm going to go to my high and hit Command J. Again, it gets really crunchy because you've amped the contrast in here. I'm going to change that from linear light to normal, and then hover between those two high layers, hold down my Option key, and clip the top one to the bottom. Again, use your eyeball on and off to see if there's any shift in here. There isn't any shift in here, so I'm good to go. I'm going to double, yeah.
The new group from layers, should it be pass-through or normal?
You can, that part isn't really going to make any difference. You can leave it at whatever the default was. So if I click on mine, it goes to pass through. Yeah, which is fine. Okay, so I'm going to go down to my low group. This is where the problem is, because this is the low stuff that's right here. To actually see it, if you want to, if you hold down your Option key and click on the high copy, you will see that none of that shadowing is in there. If you keep holding down your Option key and click on the tonal group, you'll actually see this is where all of it is. So this is all color and tone. So I'm going to start with the mixer brush. So I'm going to click on my drop-down menu and go to my mixer brush. And again, the beautiful thing about this is that you don't need to sample anything. You just need to start working it. So when I'm looking at this and thinking about it, I have actually got a highlight that's running along the top here, and then I've got the shadow that's under here, but I've got normal tone that's actually down here. So I'm going to start down here and brush up across this as opposed to starting up here and pulling down, because if I start up here and pull down, I'm adding more highlight down here. I don't want to do that. I actually want to pull this from an area that is basically normal color. So I'm just going to start to pull up here like this, and you can see it actually goes pretty quick. And you guys can actually start doing this as well. And then I've got a strong shadow line that's in here. I'm going to go to my regular brush now. Again, just check to make sure it's set right. I've got to change my flow down to like a 2%, 1 or 2%. I'm then going to make it a little bit smaller. And I'm going to sample a normal color out here. And I'm just going to start to paint in here and resample. And because I've got such a low flow, I can actually sample that lighter color. And then I'm going to go back to my mixer brush. Why am I having such a hard time finding you guys? If it seems too slow for you right now, go ahead and boost your flow up. Mine was down at a 20, and this is now a lot livelier. But now I'm in a problem area right in here, and it's this. The problem I have with this area right here is that I can't, if I use the mixer brush and I go across and I come into the khaki, it's gonna drag that green into the khaki. So I'm not gonna do that part. I'm gonna do all of this using just a regular brush. Make it a little bit smaller. Zoom in a little bit more. Sample color. And then just start to work in here. Again, if it's going too slow for you, you can boost your flow up a little bit. So bring it up to 4 and see. Yeah.
Do you know if there's a way to add shortcuts to the pen to make it go from the brush to the...
I'm sure there is. And I wish I knew them. Again, so you can see I'm constantly sampling color and remixing. Maybe bump my flow up a little bit more. And the advantage of this is that you can do highlights as well. Bump it up. Oh, my opacity was all the way down. That's what's driving me nuts here. Yeah, mucho better and mucho faster.
The objective to get all of the shadows and highlights to be completely.
So that's an interesting question about retouching in general. What I would say to that is I take everything out and then I use a layer mask to bring back in anything I want. But until you go off the cliff, you're never going to know where the cliff is. You got to go too far and then come back. Otherwise, you don't know where too far is. Or that's my philosophy anyway. So to get some idea of what's going on in here, I've just turned my texture back on and look at the difference, sorry. Look at the difference. But look here, if you come in, all the texture in the world is there. It's just the shadows and, again, the shadows and the highlights, those are all gone. That is the essence of doing frequency separation work. Is this making sense to everyone? What's going on here? Guys, again, I can't tell you how much this will change your life, especially when you're trying to smooth stuff out, trying to not destroy texture, but to replace it with good texture. This is, you can't be beat. And it's so much faster than doing tonal work. That doesn't mean tonal doesn't have its place. It still does. So I'm going to do a quick snapshot of this just so that we can compare them. Not that I took this obviously much further than the tonal stuff, but that's what the tonal work looked like. That's what this looked like. I end up using both, but this goes back to our whole layer order. If we look at our layer order right now, I've got frequency separation that's right here sitting on top. Frequency separation is pixel. Tonal would go on top of this. And the advantage of that is you can keep going back and forth between all of those. But that's a big difference than this. So look at this, guys, really quickly. If I was going to do tonal before I did my frequency separation, so if I just have this off and I've got my tonal layer on top, well, here, I'll show you. We'll just go back in history of what that really looked like. So this was my tonal layer right now, but now let's say I want to do frequency separation, right? I have actually got to merge these two together. I have got to bake my tonal work into this image in order to split it. So I would have to do Command, Option, Shift, and the letter E. This is now what I've got. Now I've got an image that I can actually split. But this tonal work is baked into this. And if I come back and say, oh man, that tonal stuff was just too strong, I screwed that up, I have to start everything over. Instead, if I go to where my snapshot is now, where I've got my frequency separation up here, I just add a tonal layer on top of this. And again, I can go back and continue to do frequency separation, And my tonal layer is still going to be on and still having its impact, but I can see it happening all in time, and nothing gets baked in. There's nothing that I can't or have to undo. Does that make sense to everyone? So again, remember, it's always this order. Pixel first, and that includes frequency separation, that includes retouching tools, clone stamp tool, healing brush tool, all of the patch tool, all of those, that's all pixel work. Cut and paste, when we're doing hair patches, that's all pixel work. On top of that is tonal. On top of that is liquify. On top of that is color grading. And then finally you end it with sharpening, output sharpening. Yes?
So you said the tonal is baked into the file, or it's not?
It is not right now, but if I did it the other way, it would have to be. So if I did it this way, if it looked like this, how do I split this? Right? If I split this down here, so again, if I do my 2 layers down here, sorry, down here, then this layer right here is already having an impact on it before I even do the split. So I'll show you an example of this. You all should do this, and then we'll call it a day. I need everyone to open up that image that we started with, the knockout that you did that's going to be your homework. So you need to go, this will hopefully give you some idea of what the problem can actually be. So, yeah, this guy. So everybody have this thing open? Because this will really screw you up and you will not recover from this. Your homework, you will hate your life. So how do I split this? This is a layer now that's actually got a mask on it. So let's go ahead and split it. So select the top, Command J, turn off the top layer, double click on the top layer and call it high. Double click on the bottom layer and call it low. I'm going to turn off the layer that's underneath it that actually made it, and we'll just have our white background. So in my low layer, I'm going to zoom in. And again, I'm looking at this area right in here for my detail. I'm going to come up to the filter and come down to a Gaussian blur. And again, I'm going to start at 1. Not enough. 2, still there. 3. Still slightly there. 4 actually hits it for me. Don't think that 4 is some magic number. You land there a lot, but don't think it's a magic number. It isn't. And go ahead and say OK to that. Turn on your high layer now. Make it active up to the image Just ignore the bomb that they planted in the, right? So anyway, focus, guys, because we gotta get we gotta be done soon. Say up to the image menu, down to apply image, and in apply image, in your layer, click on low. In your blending mode, change it to subtract. Make sure that you've got a scale of 2 and an offset of 128. And this is what I was talking about. This is what happened yesterday. I don't get this gray thing. When I changed my layer to low, this is a bug that's happening in this new version of Photoshop. This changed from, because I have another channel in here, it actually picked the knockout channel. You need to make sure your channel is RGB or it screws up. Again, scale of 2 and offset of 128. And go ahead and say OK to that. And then we're going to change its blending mode to linear light. And then zoom back out. And look what happens. Look at this edge. So you get this green, yellow, weird shit that's happening in here. And this is a nightmare to try to fix. And the reason that this is happening is that because when I blurred the low layer, I'm actually pushing those pixels out beyond where my mask is. I'm not blurring the mask, I'm blurring the layer. And it completely fucks up your the split in here. And you get this line, and it's horrible. So what you have to do instead is go back in history to when this file just got opened. you have actually got to do a merge stamp version of this clean out with the new background. This is now baking. So click on your top image, your top layer, hold down the Command key, the Option key, the Shift key, and the letter E. That will actually merge them into one layer. This layer now becomes your new version, NV, and this is what you then split. Again, Command J, lower one is low, upper one is high, and then you do not have that problem. But again, you want to, what happens then when you realize that, oh, I've fucked this up, I didn't remove all the spill. Yeah, I mean, this is dangerous to be doing this stuff, but there's no alternative to doing this. Questions?
If you like get to the end of working on something and you just want to go back and fix like a little bit of color, can you just like do the same process?
So here, the truth of it is this. So let's say that actually became a problem right now. You realize that there was spill, right? The truth of it is the majority of the work that you're doing here in your FS group, so I'm going to go ahead and put this into a group. So hang on one second.
Oh, but that controls color though.
Hang on, I'm just going to show you what I was talking about. All right, so I'm going to turn off my new version. And this is my FS group right now. And if I turn it off and turn on the layer underneath this, you can see this is where my spill action is happening. So again, this is where the spill part is actually happening in here. So if for some reason I missed part of that in my frequency group, I can actually come to my frequency group right here. I'm going to turn all of this off. In my frequency group right here, you can put a layer mask on the frequency group. Hit the B key to get a brush. Make sure it's completely 100% opacity, 100% flow. I'm going to go ahead and make it a hard brush just so that you can see it. Black is my foreground color. Make it a little bit larger. And I can go over all of this. I can can hide all of that in my frequency separation because all the work I did in my frequency separation was here. And then I can go back and continue to remove my stuff right here. So again, if I needed to add, I'll show you because I'll change it so you can see what it looks like. So again, this is now looks like it's clear here, but let's say I want to introduce spill. So I want to add a color in here. I'm going to click and add a really light cyan. Sorry. Yeah, I'll pump up the green a little bit.
So essentially before this though,
This will allow, oh, sorry. No, go ahead.
before we did the split, you're protecting your spill by making it, like a new version of it.
Yes.
So it's baked before you do your split, so if you need to go back and do any more spill, you have like another copy that's non-destructive.
Right, or I can do exactly what I'm doing right here. The reason you're seeing this is that because I've used a mask to hide the split frequency work because 9 times out of 10, the majority of the split frequency work is done just on her skin. So I can I can hide that part of the frequency separation and let layers that are underneath it show through. So right now, I'm changing the color of the spill of her hair to this bright green, but I'm doing it down here on this layer, right? Whereas I can't do that if I do it right here in the middle of her face. You don't see anything because the frequency separation group is still showing in that area. But it's not in this area over in here. As I start to come in, you'll see it ends because that's where my mask is. Does that make sense? All right. So anyway, you've got the retouching notes on this, and that's what's due next week. Oh, so I did see everybody's, the people who turned it in for your final project. I sent notes to a couple of people. Next week, I expect everybody to have theirs in by next week. And we will, again, the way this starts out is I want you to just be able to, if you can have some images that sort of show what you're thinking about doing, bring those in. A lot of you already had that in your presentation, so that you just bring that. Really quickly, we'll take a look at that stuff in class. If anybody wants to talk about stuff, get some feedback on it. If anybody has questions about this, that, or the other, I want to start that process. But again, remember, there's a lot of flexibility in your final project. We're still, 7 weeks away. So, but we need to recognize that that is coming quickly. All right, I'll see you guys. Have a good week.
If we have something that's completely different from like our.
You can do a 180 the last week if that's what you choose to do. It's not that I'm holding you to that. I just want you to be thinking about it now, and then again, it evolves. I just don't want you to wait till the last week to try to come up with an idea.